Latest in our road show, the county commissioner, Barnstable County, I'm Mark Forrest, chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. With me today is Ron Bergstrom to my right and Sheila Lyons. And we're thrilled to be here in Truro. This is springs back a lot of memories for me over my years working in Provincetown in the town manager's office, working for Congressman Studs, spending a lot of time in Truro, and obviously Congressman Dalton. A lot of work over the years in this community. I love this community. I feel so honored to be here. And I really want to thank the Truro Select Board for hosting us and showing us such hospitality, particularly its outstanding town administrator, Kevin Grant. We're just thrilled to be here, and we're thrilled to have a conversation about things that we're working on, things that you're working on, and how we can work together better to help folks here in Truro, and how we can do a much better job ourselves. So what I'd like to do is just give you sort of a layout of the procedures. We're going to call our board to order shortly. We're going to call the Truro Select Board, since we have quorums. We're going to call our boards to order and go into session, and then we'll proceed through our agenda. I think there are plenty of agendas circulating around. Robin, okay. If you need one, feel free to grab one here at the table. So for our minutes, it's 1:05. So chair declares the quorum present. We have Commissioner Lund, State Commissioner Bergstrom, and myself. So let me just read this statement that we typically do at the beginning of all of our meetings. This meeting of the county commissioners will be conducted in accordance with applicable laws. Persons wishing to participate can do so in person or can view the meeting live via broadcast on the Barnstable County YouTube channel or on our website at kfive.gov. Any person who wishes to audio or video record this meeting needs to acknowledge your presence and your intentions right over there. Thank you. Let's see. We have this. I think we're in reasonably good shape. So here we go. So I'd like to turn it over now to the Truro board so they can go into call their meeting to order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you like me to run through our following instructions as well?
Go ahead.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is August 26th. It's 1:06 p.m. And I'm calling this meeting the Truro Select Board to order. This meeting is being held in a hybrid format with both in-person and remote participation. Are we offering remote participation available?
No, we are not.
Okay, this meeting is being held in person. Residents may attend in person. The agenda, meeting link, and viewing instructions can be found on the Truro website under upcoming events. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce members of the select board. I'm Nancy Medoff, board chair, and I'm going to ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves, and then I will introduce town staff.
Hi there, Sue Gerard Irwin, vice chair.
John Douglas, town clerk for select board.
Our Glatzel, member, Sue Anderson. Thank you. Also in the room, we have town manager Kelly Sullivan Clark. We have assistant town manager, finance director Alex Lesson. We have our fire chief, Tim Collins. We have Julie Cataldo, also in the fire department, our public safety, and we also have in the room Scott Horsley, our scientist and our water engineer / consultant. We very much appreciate you having this meeting here, and we're looking forward to the discussion.
I should point out, for full disclosure, Scott Horsley used to work for the county.
Long time ago.
And you did an outstanding job. Glad to see you still. What I'd like to do is ask if we could have everybody join us in the pledge of allegiance. The flag. Flag today will be displayed on the screen. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a brief moment of silence. Please join us in taking a moment to reflect on the bravery and the sacrifices of all those who have put their lives on the line in service to our country. Thank you. Before I go to public comments, I'd like to just ask the county staff that are here to acknowledge, raise your hand and announce yourself, starting with Michael Douglas.
Michael Dutton, I'm the county administrator. Jay Gardner, the director of health and environment.
I'm Young County Clerk. There are three assistant county administrators.
Ian Roberts with IT.
Mike McGuire, director of Cuyahoga Family Extension.
Oh, I'm sorry, Morty Michael.
Anybody else?
Misty Meyer, program manager.
Andy Platt, emergency management director.
Ian White, laboratory director.
Randy Colstead, the Deputy Director of Health and Environment Department.
Very good. We're expecting Brian Baumgart. Who? Come on in, step in. We gotta see your face. Thank you. Very good.
And there's a couple more chairs if anybody wants to.
Thanks, Rob. So the next item on our agenda is public comment. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to say something? Yes, sir.
Just stand up.
Just stand up. Speak loud enough so we can hear you.
Thanks. Yes, my name is Steve Buckley. I'm from Chatham, but always good to be able to go to other places and see what's going on. And so forth, just like the board is. I just want people to know that the Cape Cod Canal Bridge's final environmental impact statement is available. We need something to put you to sleep night or any other night, and about 2,000-3,000 pages of document there. But one thing I wanted to point out was that, and I got brought this up before, trying to get them to do take a regional look at it instead of a look from the state and the feds. Is that the Mass DOT says that even though the bridges will be able to handle 50% more traffic, that traffic won't go anywhere. It'll just dissipate and evaporate when it gets over. In fact, doesn't mean 50% more people will be visiting Truro or Chatham or any place, which is particularly curious. And so, anyway, I just thought I'd let you know that it doesn't take the board to request a regional impact statement, also called the DRI, that any municipal board, planning board, or zoning board of appeals of any town can make a request, and then commissioners and members of the Cape Cod Commission, not these commissioners, but members of the Cape Cod Commission can vote on whether or not to take that closer look. But I guess it depends how curious you are about the future, even after some of us might not be here. Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else from the public? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Eric Schwab. I'm Barnstable, the Village of Hyannis. I'm currently in Candy for County Commission. I'm here to thank you, first of all, for putting carrying capacity on the agenda and to update you on what other towns and villages are having to say about the water.
Speak up.
Certainly. The last couple of months, we've seen prolonged discussions in a number of towns, Falmouth, particularly North Falmouth, water usage and Lake Prairie. We've seen discussions in Barnstable, high-rise construction, our ability to carry these buildings. Last night, we saw a discussion in Yarmouth, where select board member Forrest acted decisively. I want to thank him for that. We've seen discussions in Harwich about the water and the carrying capacity of this. We've had discussions in Wellfleet. Hopefully today is the start of a discussion in Truro about how much development we can really sustain here in Cape Cod. With new bridges, like Steve mentioned, there's a considerable amount of traffic coming our way, and we need to plan for it. We need to have an understanding of how much water you can actually use. It's unclear. There's no regional analysis at this time. And we would just like to encourage the commission to move forward with Commissioner Lyons' recommendation that we get a handle on it. I think now's a good time. If you're going to go to all 15 towns, I would like to recommend that you expedite that, not take 15 months to reach out to the public. And perhaps produce a report in, say, 3 months' time, at least preliminary, discuss whether or not we need to curtail changes to 40A, limit duplexes by right, and whether or not the 40B regs are just simply too much for Cape Cod to handle. Simply cannot sustain the high density development that's currently going on. And we have at least 6 towns now which are actively asking for the county to step in and help scale development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
It's Briggs, Toro, President Voter. I'm just curious, there's a newly formed group called the Friends of the Pamet River.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if there's any way that the commission might be able to help us in some of our efforts, one of which I'm thinking maybe AmeriCorps could help with setting some of the traps for the green cracks and things like that. Or if there's any grant money available. So just wanted to say, keep us in mind.
We would love to help.
Yes.
Okay, and we have Mike McGuire. I'm gonna ask you to speak with him and bring it settle down after Mike's done with this presentation. And see if we can work out a meeting and attempt to get together. Anybody else from the public? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. All members present and the public. My name is Jack Reamer. I'm a True Water. And I appreciate this board's focusing on this topic. I know there are in particular some members that have really made an effort to get this considered as a county-wide initiative. Water supply and carrying capacity has become a regional issue. Here in Truro, we share a regional water supply with our neighbor Provincetown. And there have been a number of studies conducted and funded through grants. At last night's select board meeting, I questioned why certain studies that have been performed by Apex, a company that was not invited to our community water discussion held earlier this summer, is again not being posted. The results of the 2 studies in June have not been posted on our official water portal. My question is why? I was told by our town administrator that basically the town of Truro does not agree to some of the information. And to me, why not publish the information? Because there have been letters shared back and forth between Provincetown and Truro, where these reports have been identified, but yet the public can't view them. To me, this is a mission that is the intent behind it, to keep the public informed fully of what these studies talk about. They're scientific studies. We've been warned about lying about certain issues. There's no lies here. The only lies that are committed are those of omission. Thank you very much for an opportunity to talk.
And thank you very much for your comments. Is there anybody else? Then we have a yes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tatiana Knight, a resident here in Truro. And I just wanted to express my support for Provincetown's initiative to apply for a district of critical planning concern here around the Pamet Lens. The discussion in Provincetown a few weeks ago seemed thoughtful and very forward-looking. And I feel like that has been missing discussions here in Truro, and they've been also fairly secretive. I live on a road that now has a planned well exploration. We know nothing about how that's going to happen. We don't know when, we don't know how, we know nothing. So to Mr. Reamer's point, Provincetown's website is actually a lot more useful than Truro's, because reports such as the Apex report are found there, even though the report was commissioned by both towns with a grant that funded it. So I'd like to express my support for it, because I feel like bringing the commission into the discussions will hopefully prevent irreversible decisions. Our water supply, as Mr. Sporsley said in our town water discussion a few weeks ago, is critical and it is under pressure. It's under pressure from environmental issues and development just adds to that pressure. So glad you're here. Thank you for listening. And we look forward to your participation and decisions.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I wasn't going to speak, but Jeff Fisher, a Truro resident, I'm also on the Walsh Committee. And also a hydrologist previously in my previous life, but I did want to address the critical issue or critical supply. You know, it's great to look at aquifers and trying to make sure that you're not overusing it. And I understand that there may be issues down in Falmouth and Hyannis because there's a lot of water needs down there, but out here in Truro, that there really is, as the studies that some people have been talking about, they've shown that the northern part of the Pamet is, they've got 3 well fields in there already. They've studied them, you know, they can't really put a new well there. But right now, there's an issue between, obviously, you're aware of, between Provincetown and Truro with water supply. There is water supply in the Pamet lands in the southern part of Truro, and the town has indicated that they're willing to work with Provincetown on that. But I think people are using this issue of critical supply, and the select board in Provincetown is trying to use the issue that they brought forth. I forget what it was called, but to force Truro to do what Provincetown wants them to do. I think I would just ask you to be cautious about what you do, because Truro is trying to work with Provincetown on water supply. There is adequate water supply. You know, the town here is 3/4 forest. It's got lots of recharge, plenty of water. But there are USGS models that you could use to look at those things. And I ask you to look at the science and what it really says. And also, the other thing that we're not talking about is the critical issue of housing. Truro is trying to do something unique, build housing for not just affordable housing, but attainable housing. And you need water for that. So you need to weigh those 2 issues and just be careful about what you say when you can or you can't have development. But, you know, you can compromise with the 2 and allow development and at the same time develop water supply. And remember that we're talking about, for what Truro's trying to do, is water supply for year-round residents, not just water supply, because the critical issue in here is water supply for the summer residents. And Truro is trying to keep year-round residents in the town with their housing plan. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Matt Sutton, I've come from Harwich to congratulate you on your agenda tonight, placing carrying capacity right out there for all of us to consider.
Well, thank you, Matt, for asking us to keep it on our agenda and raising the issues at the meeting.
Well, thanks. And I ask you, if you might, to consider forging the thought that all the 15 towns on the Cape might get a checklist of elements of carrying capacity, which in their governance, in their decision making, we would forward on to you to get an assessment of the sense of each town, because clearly we're going to need all the towns to get together to find some kind of common ground in order to deal with all the elements.
Just FYI, just let me just make it clear. All this information is incredibly helpful for us, but it's also helpful for our department heads that are here. Brian runs our Clean Water Center. We have a Health and Environmental Department here. Obviously, this information is being made available to the staff at the Cape Cod Commission. We are all absorbing this feedback from this community and the other communities here in Cape Cod. And did you want to continue?
Only the Harwich appreciates being you being receptive to our comments, you know, from the previous view.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Was there anybody else that would like to be heard? Yes, in the back.
Thank you. In Greenville for a voter. It's astonishing to me that I think 6, 7, or 8 people have spoken, and it wasn't until Jeff spoke that anybody mentioned the human beings. This is not a simple issue. It's not simply protecting our water. Of course we have. We also have to protect the human beings that live here, that are being born. We are capable of doing more than one thing. So I urge this group not to act precipitously. Don't think, don't act like if we take a pause, it doesn't impact anything important. If we take a pause on development, what's going to happen to the mother who's raising 5 kids in substandard housing? It's only going to get harder to find. It's only going to get expensive. This is not a paper issue. This is a human issue. And I urge you, if you're going to do anything, make sure you are allowing for us to take care of our needs.
Very good. Thank you again. Anybody else? Good. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Connie Mather. I'm a year-round resident in Toronto. And this is not my usual venue, so forgive me if I'm a little nervous or redundant, but I have watched this controversy. I am a lifelong environmentalist. I work with environmental education and environmental policy law. And we can't take care of the mother with 5 children if they have no water to drink. And with what we have here on the Cape is different. We have a very fragile but unique water system here from what I can see and everything I've read. And even though I had to go to places other than the town site to get the Apex study and other studies that were older and more, I think, honest about, or unbiased about how it was and how much we had. I want us to remember that the mother with 5 children needs a place to stay. You have to find a proper place for her to stay without having her home destroying or contaminating the waters, the recharge areas, and the waters of the chemicals.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to be heard? Yes, sir. And then.
I'm Dave Bamford, I'm a Toronto resident of the question. I just would like to say, I don't disagree with either part of the discussion we're having, that water is absolutely critical and we must preserve our ability to provide adequate water supply for the residents of the Outer Cape. I also am strongly in favor of providing attainable and affordable housing in this town to the people who need it. I think part of the problem we have is that people are obscuring some of these issues with their own private agendas that include opposing any kind of development. And I think it's really, really important that we bear in mind the science, follow the science, and understand what the carrying capacity is. I'm really glad that you're studying that, because we need to understand that, but we also have to build housing that will be supported with new.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Rita McCarthy, year-round resident in Toronto. I appreciate everybody's perspective on this. I would like to just offer these thoughts for your consideration. First, my gratitude for what it's worth. The idea of carrying capacity came out for a resident, Ron Fickner, who was a former statistician for the CBC. So we're very pleased to see that this idea has been taken up so broadly. And we especially thank the county, for those of us who need to discuss it from this perspective, especially thank the county for taking it up. It's a very serious issue. I think we have to be more nuanced in discussing what 5 years ago was called false choice between water and housing. I do not hear anybody in this town, and I talk to a lot of people that's opposed to housing, except very few extremists, like I'll call them extremists. What people mostly are struggling with is the volume, the size and scale of the housing, and not housing up per se. And Mr. Banner raised a really important issue, which is taking care of Toronto first. One of the things we're not yet discussing is the ramifications of various state legislative actions that impose zoning requirements on towns, not just Truro, but on all towns affected by them. And that is affecting our ability to put the people of our own towns first. Truro's residents, whoever needs housing for any reason, should get the help, in my own personal opinion, that we can give them by whatever means. What complicates is that we have to take into account what the needs are of state and national unhoused or housing challenged individuals. And I don't think Truro can address that problem. And it would be unrealistic to do that. So one issue is scale. The other issue is carrying capacity is not just about water and water conditions. Carrying capacity is about what people can afford economically. Carrying capacity is about taxes. Carrying capacity is about jobs. Carrying capacity has many other dimensions to it that affect our ability to make wise decisions from the big picture. I agree with Mr. Brandon and others who say we should rely on the science to the extent that it involves water control. And then the last thing I want to mention is that the conversation about water supply is one-sided. The issue that we definitely face in Toronto is wastewater management and care. And, you know, where Ann is correct to say we need to think about human beings, we have to think about the human beings for whom wastewater becomes a personal challenge on their personal properties because of the plans and or infrastructure that remain on here, which may affect their homes in the future based on decisions made in this town. So I ask us to consider it in good faith that make the assumption that most people in this town want housing, and they want housing at a scale that our people can afford and our water can sustain both income and outcome. And I really appreciate your willingness to take this up on a more nuanced, comprehensive basis.
Anybody else? All I can say is, wow. This is great. This is wonderful. You're so lucky to have this constituency to guide you and advise you during your meetings and the course of your business. Now, just so that you know, we're somewhat prohibited to get into a dialogue with each of the points. We're largely here to listen, to take notes, to share what we're learning with our staff, with our department heads, because we as a group have promised to listen and then present some recommendations, to take some measures. And so this is all part of that exercise. But I do want to, for the purposes of this meeting, many of these comments were certainly addressed to us, but also to both boards. And I wanted to invite Nancy. I don't know if there are some responses that you would comments that you and your fellow colleagues in the board would like to make, but I want to make sure that we provide some time for that, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, there were many comments that were made that have been made before, that we have answered before.
Yeah.
Repeating the comment doesn't change the answer. I mean, if anybody from the board would like to address anything, I don't really feel the need because it's the same comments that keep coming up that have been answered. But if anybody else from the board would like to address anything, you should feel free. Okay, great, but thank you for the opportunity.
I would say, you know, we've been to a lot of meetings that this issue has come up. You know, I have to say that, you know, sometimes people rant, sometimes they repeat themselves, but these are probably the most insightful comments that I've heard. Everybody stated that way, and they framed the issue very, very carefully. And I think we'll discuss that on the agenda, but you eventually presented what we're going to have to discuss. You're going to have to discuss. I know most of the comments seem to be aimed at us, but that's the first people you go to are your boards of selectmen. They're the ones we stand ready. Once you make the decisions here in the town, we stand ready to be of support. Anyway, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Lynch, did you want to make a comment before we?
No, I appreciate all of these comments as well, and I have great concerns, and everybody knows that, and I'm from being on this board and other boards. And, you know, it's not an easy path forward. But it's a pot that we have control over and that we've created. I mean, let's face it, we all used to visit and now we all live here. So I'll save whatever other comments I have as the discussion goes on, but I do appreciate everyone being here and you know, it's an inconvenient situation that we're in, an inconvenient truth, so to speak. So, thank you.
Very good. Let's move on to the next item of the agenda, item 5, which is Town of Truro update and discussion, town managers and members of the select board. This is the opportunity that we really enjoy, where the select board, your town officials essentially tell us what we're doing wrong, what we could do better, where we can improve things, what other services you think we might want to consider down the road. And at each of our meetings, we get a whole variety of incredibly interesting suggestions. And we've been taking this all in. There are some very good ideas that have come up at our meetings with the town. So this is an opportunity to turn the discussion to you, Nancy, and your board members, and Kelly, and others that are here from the town of Truro. And I'm gonna let you sort of MC how you start this off, but we're here to listen to you.
Fantastic. Thank you again for coming. I'm gonna actually, I know that Kelly's been working on a list, a small list. Small and very thoughtful, you know, but I want to be respectful of your time and all that, so I'm gonna turn it over to Kelly.
Thank you.
Okay, Kelly.
Thank you for hearing our list. I apologize that it is kind of a laundry list, but you know, you all do so much, and we see the opportunities that the commission and the county present, and also appreciate the opportunities that we've already are offering. So this is not in any particular order, but I'll start with housing. It's, you know, obviously this is an obvious crisis, but it bears repeating. I did just last week receive another email from a town employee with kids who are at risk of losing their housing. That's a devastating email to receive as an employer, also as somebody who knows this community member that's been a part of our community for decades. As a fellow mom, you know, we don't know where your kids are going to end up and where they're going to be sleeping. So, you know, I just want to remind everyone that we are severely lacking in terms of housing capacity. Truro is really has reaffirmed time and time again that we want appropriate and thoughtful, affordable, and attainable housing for our community. Our select board's 5 goals include addressing the housing crisis, and we have multiple objectives on our FY27 select board goals and objectives to help address those needs. 2 of the visible objectives are getting some traction on implementing the community's vision for the Walsh property, and also for the redevelopment of the Truro motor inn. So I was really happy to see that there is a conversation about carrying capacity later on in the agenda, since another select board goal is to protect our natural and built environment. And the way that we're looking at the housing opportunities at Walsh and at Truro motor inn would be a way to increase the housing capacity, encourage development that recharges the lens, and has a net zero or net positive effect on water quality. We do have Scott Forsley here today to talk a little bit about all of that, but I think, you know, that is what our community is asking of our administration and of the select board, and so that's what we are asking for your help in providing. The community supported housing at the former Truro motor inn at town meeting, and also through town meeting votes, recommendations for the Walsh property, and it approved the zoning overlay district that will allow for the kind of thoughtful and appropriate housing that we in Truro want. So that we're talking about, we don't want the big box development that's built right on Route 6. We want thoughtful, community-minded, well-planned out neighborhoods that are going to fit the scale of our community. And so that's what you know, we're planning for based on meeting votes. So I would ask that if there are ways that the commissioners or the county could help us realize our community's vision for those properties and our critical housing goals, that you would do so by helping us remove barriers or offering regulatory support, that kind of thing. The next item on my list is dredging. I want to just applaud Ken Cirillo's leadership because I have seen the most amazing positive changes in the way the dredge program is administered since he became the administrator of that program. Projects are prioritized very thoughtfully, very fairly, and I really appreciate that. As you know, such a small town with a small harbor, it is easy to get overlooked by the political power of a community like Falmouth or something else. But I feel like Truro harbor has been prioritized at the same level of other communities, and I really genuinely appreciate that. And I think our entire community does. I would say I would love to see the county continue to prioritize the dredge projects that way. That even though we know it's hard for the dredge program to get to us, and that we do have a small harbor, it's really critical that we do get dredged for safety and to contribute to our blue economy. So it's incredibly important that we continue to be prioritized. The other suggestion that I made when we were looking at the dredge rates and possible solutions was that the county procure a contract with a mechanical dredging company so that we can be ready to do emergency to address shoaling on an emergency basis without needing to go through a full-blown procurement process that can take time that the regulatory agencies don't provide us with. And it's my understanding that that is being looked at by the dredge program. So I'm thrilled to hear that happen. We did have to do some emergency dredging using like an amphibious excavator a few years ago. It was a great solution, but we got it done by the skin of our teeth and probably, paid more for it than we would have wanted to. And I think we come to that.
Can we just stick with dredging for a moment? And do you have any other dredging comments?
No other dredging.
Because I want to give Michael a chance to respond, and I do appreciate your comments about Ken Cirillo, who runs the program. And it's always going to bat the truth. I can just tell you that at commissioner meetings, dredge advisory committee meetings, he feels a real connection and understands the significance of what dredging is in a tournament. Ken is also someone who has brought up the need for the additional equipment as well. And I don't know if there's anything to report on that. I know we've talked about going after some funding opportunities for that, but it's good to know that having that equipment could be a real help for sure. Like you want to.
I would only echo what Commissioner Forrest said. We do look for grant funding all the time for equipment, dredge related equipment. Mechanical dredging is high on the list of items that we're looking at, or other alternatives that could sort of do the same thing as mechanical dredge operation would do. So that is high on our priority list. So I'm glad to hear that Borough also has high on your priority list. So that's very helpful.
Yeah, you should be aware that of the things that we're always talking to legislators about, it's dredging and dredging funding. We've also been successful in advocating a dredging grants round that has just come out for the Seaport Council. That was through and Ken was a part of our lobbying effort, and many of the harbor masters here on the Cape helped us out here as well. So the thing that we're blessed with is to have so many active, dedicated municipal department heads. I explained this at our last meeting, and Matt had mentioned this before. Oftentimes our work gets done because we have municipal leaders that are always giving us input on a fairly regular basis on what's going on. We have dredge advisory committee meetings, so all the harbor masters participate in those. They let us know what's going on. So when we heard a year ago that the state was going to cut funding for dredging, we just geared up. We wrote letters to the delegation. We lobbied the administration. We talked to Ken, Michael, myself, and we had telemeetings with the Secretary of Economic Affairs and his staff. And so I ended up getting a call 2 weeks ago from the Secretary of Economic Affairs saying, hey, just want you to know, we're gonna open up another round of funding for the council. So one of the reasons why we're here is we appreciate what you do for us. This is clearly a team effort. Without our harbor masters, without the department heads participating in so many county meetings. I mean, health and environment, they're on the phone all the time talking to the health agents in all the Cape towns. We have cooperative extension. They're always networking with municipal officials. So much of the work that goes on behind the scenes is basically our department heads interacting with your people. And it's incredibly helpful. So this is part of what keeps us engaged. So part of this discussion today helps reinforce the success of those collaborations, the success of those partnerships and working together. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, we just leave it until we were to.
I know she's not. I just want to stick on the dredging. No, the dredging. is-
get lost.
No. We're going to go through the list. Yes. Commissioner.
Just want to say, that, besides the mechanical limitations of dredging the harbor and the regulatory environment, closures. Oftentimes it's a burden on the towns to put through that way. We've been trying and talking about getting some of the county basis, I think so we felt like, this is important. We also asked for some relief in things like there are other species which are not as prevalent. So that would help us because there's more time to dredge and more opportunities we can get to. It's one of the earliest projects in the so yeah, it's a big issue. The county would like to help the regulatory environment as well. So
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Michael.
I just wanted to, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't let this crowd and the select board know that Representative Floody has been incredibly involved in our efforts, both with the environmental bond bill and the state budget, to try to insert provisions that would allow us a little bit of money to do a whole host of different things involving the dredge. So it's been critical piece of that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. The representative is for our police, our collective police, and has done an outstanding job in advocating for us and putting language in both the economic development bill that's now in conference committee, as well as the environmental bond bill. She's put provisions on both of those bills. And while they are bonding authorizations, that is when we had meetings with the Secretary of Economic Development and Economic Affairs. They were all telling us that they need bond authorization language. So with her help, we were able to pull that off. So that is there so that in the future, the administration, whatever administration's in office, can draw it down that bond. And when at our dredge advisory committee meetings, we start hearing from our harbor masters telling us they're getting ready to go after more money and they need more money and there's no money in the till. That's when we re-engage, sort of make sure that bonding authorization is going down upon. So again, it's very collaborative in the legislators. I'm glad you brought that up because they're a very important part of this and they've been very engaged. And kudos to Rush Lighting. She's been fantastic. We're back to you on your list.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Levine.
Great. I know you spoke about this recently at the Harwich meeting, but procurement expansion would be very beneficial for us here in Truro. As we all know, RFPs take us time, cost money, and don't obtain the same joint purchasing power that a joint
So
purchasing.
have you given Michael your list of things that you'd like?
I will be happy to share with them. I do kind of pick them off
Good.
once in a while.
Good. That's great.
A particular focus on software, joint purchasing, because I think we had more uniformity in software across the state. It would do better for our constituents, it would help us with, regionalization efforts, and with our staff can support each other. It means we could probably do more with,
IT staff to support ourselves. So, you know, right now, we're working with building permit software that a lot of towns only have our KCAD, which has been really beneficial for us. But also, I know a lot of communities are moving towards rental registration softwares for short-term rentals, recreation software, surveying softwares, things like that. Next item is just the tiny little problem with broadband and cellular access out here in Borough. We have a severely underserved population of our community when it comes to broadband access. As we know, that is now, you know, basically a public utility at this point. And it's an emergency response problem. You know, at our oceanside beaches where we have had shark-human interactions in the past, you can't make a cell phone call, and those minutes really matter. We know that fiber would allow us to have more cellular repeaters that could be installed that are, you know, kind of smaller scale to putting up some huge antenna somewhere in our coastal community. So so I would really encourage if the commissioners had any ability to help us advocate for the last mile, that would be really helpful. You know, those kinds of situations are really intensified during things like the blizzard that we experienced this past March, when you have people that just can't, you know, they can make a call out of their house. And so how are we supposed to know if something is another item is a building inspector development program. This is something that I've talked to Michael about in the past, that I think we're not the only community that are looking for building inspectors. I know that that's a statewide issue, probably a statewide issue. But especially now that we have this funded mandate for inspecting short-term rentals, we really need a development program that can provide recruitment and also support in terms of training or test prep courses for aspiring local building inspectors and building commissioners. So we can start to create that pipeline so we don't have those kinds of gaps. I mean, obviously that's a health and safety issue. If we don't have people to be inspecting buildings to make sure that they are safe. My next item is gratitude for the storm response efforts. I think Anne's here, and we're just really grateful for the BC REPC. I'll never get that acronym right. For those meetings, and especially for Frank O'Loughlin's really lively forecasts. He's a highlight for me personally. But you know, those meetings they're a lifeline for our emergency management team. They're a really great way for us to hear what's going on in other communities and make sure that we are advocating for the needs of our community and that we are providing, you know, as much as we can to our community members. I was really thrilled to get an after action review after that storm. That was awesome, so thorough, so critical. I'd love to make that. I know that I'm gonna dump so that nobody throws anything at me, but I'd love to make that I'm sure that you all do, but make that a regular occurrence. And if we can do them a little bit sooner after events, I know we all need a break after being on for 5-6 days straight. Some of us not sleeping. But it would be great to do that while things are still fresh in our heads. So I really appreciate that after action review, and big props to, I think her name is Sonia, who is the comms person. Phenomenal. The comms during the storm event. I mean, all of the comms that come out of the county are great. And you know, I always look forward to seeing the name come up on my inbox because I know it's going to be, you know, a good notification. But during the storm, I just felt like that comms team went above and beyond. So I really want to make sure that we highlight their efforts. The next thing, kind of similar to the storm event, is that it would be really helpful if we could get some help with recruiting volunteers for a CERT team here in Truro, Community Emergency Response Team. We had one for years and all of our members aged out. They're really critical in terms of offering boots on the ground support during major disasters. But unfortunately, our community is skewing kind of older and more part-time. And so then when you have like a major winter event, you have more people that need service and less people that can help be those boots on the ground to provide the service. So we're struggling. We really need volunteers. And so if there was anything the county could do with helping us to recruit program, maybe offering some basic training or something like that, that we could send people who are on the fence about volunteering. You know, I don't know if I could really give help. Well, maybe you could go take this 1-day course with the county. That might be a great way for us to start to mobilize more new volunteers. I think, I expect that our select board may have a little more they want to talk about in terms of the mass DOT plans for out here. We feel really strongly about incorporating proper stormwater drainage. You know, we're hearing about water resource issues. It seems really crazy to me to do a road resurfacing project and not incorporate addressing stormwater as part of that. Especially when we talk about our sensitive environmental projects. So anything you can do to help us continue to be consulted about proposed options for the lake diet too that's being proposed, and to include safety measures in key areas in town as they do a repaving would be really helpful. I don't know, can I pause for a second to see if they, so I remember one to jump in on
Right.
that.
No, dear.
That I guess I'll just keep, I'm almost done, I promise. I'm almost on the line.
No, this is all great stuff. No, we've been hearing, I'm glad you raised the Mass DOT. There are a number of communities that have been struggling with getting Mass DOT to pay closer attention to culverts and drainage and water management. And that has been an ongoing struggle. The good thing is that they keep hearing repeatedly from us and other groups here in our Cape. And again, Representative Lowe has been in on those conversations. And all I can say at the moment is it's a constant effort on our part. The other hat that I wear is I'm chairman of the Cape Cod Conservation District. We provide funds to communities for ecological restoration projects. And I've been involved in a fairly comprehensive Cape-wide initiative that's raised a lot of money. And Truro is on the list of communities that will benefit from this program. And all I have to say is your team here in Truro has been outstanding to work with. I have nothing but rave reviews for them and the guidance. And also they get it too. They understand that like sometimes it's difficult to convince a state agency to do the right thing. But they're just as persistent as we are in trying to get those points across. So I appreciate them being willing to stick to their guns and help us get these points across. But this is going to be an ongoing effort. We don't have any wins to announce right now, but I do appreciate the work they do. I'm official with them.
I saw Katie Hollerson, our housing coordinator, is watching the room. She might have stepped out. But the support that she receives through the housing shared services consultant is excellent. Yes, she's very grateful for that. The real estate transfer fee home rule petition. So our community voted for the home rule petition for the real estate transfer fee in 2019, 2022, and 2025. So they keep reaffirming that home rule petition with the hope to see some movement on that. We were really appreciative that the county was thinking collaboratively about how to possibly make that happen. I think Truro's major concern is just making sure that the fees that were, if this program moves forward, that the fees that would be collected from Truro specifically are returned to Truro. So we are supportive of a joint effort. Just want to make sure that it still has some autonomy there. And then my last item is a regional human needs assessment for the Outer Cape. We face a host of challenging issues related to our distance from medical facilities and other key services, our rural and isolated area, our aging population, our people with disabilities, the challenges that young families and working people face around housing, childcare, mental health, and transportation access.
So obtaining some quantifiable data about the human service needs on the Outer Cape would help us make more data-driven decisions about our municipal services and might help us identify more opportunities for public-private partnerships, regional solutions, potentially help us be more, advocate better in grant applications and that kind of thing. So that's my list.
Terrific.
Yes.
Get that all down?
No, I got.
Yes, yes.
I'll handle it.
Yes.
No, this is all very, very constructive, incredibly helpful.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yeah.
Clerk Douglas, did you have something?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Thank you again for being here. It's great. We get terrific support, IT support from the county. And our Director of Technology, Dave Winterberg, we want me to say thank you to Earl Harmon. He calls me Earl. And
All right.
every time I see the kid, I thank him because it is, it's intense what they have to do. Now, my question is a little bit extended there because your IT strategy also calls for stronger cyber resilience and more shared support. There is something you might want to consider is a core cybersecurity functions for monitoring incident reports and recovery. Some of this occurs to make it more deliberate and facilitating to the town, and we don't lose control of administration, websites, and we retain local control, but it would amplify it. I don't think I need to explain what's happening. It's happening all the time in the advances. So we would appreciate that as a consideration, particularly going forward. And I know our Director of Technology said it would be something to consider.
Good. Did you get all that?
Thank you all. Appreciate it. We have had a very substantive conversation about what some of your trends is to water and to housing, but I did want to say something quick about housing.
Speak louder.
Sure, sorry. Because I think that, we hear the words housing crisis so often that it's become diluted. And it's really important to know that especially in a community like for us, since COVID, home prices have increased 86% from about $450,000 to over $1.1 million. And rentals have all but disappeared during that time. Most of that housing stock was bought up. And so when we have these conversations about housing, I would be a person who was switched my entire life from Provincetown since I was 18. Many of the people who talk about the housing crisis don't know in their everyday life who live here right now, who are either unhoused or in insecure housing that is cold or they're moving 2-3 times a year. And so I want to say that I know that this is a crisis across the country. But here in Truro, the cost of housing is so high and the lack of market rentals, which are expensive anyway, is so profound that it really is important for us to consider ways to address the housing crisis locally, of course, with great protection for non-living sources and for water. But our school has half the amount of kids that it did 8 years ago. And I'm raising my daughters here. I'm seeing my friends, my parents not have places to live. And, to Ann's point, the human cost of the housing crisis is incredible. And when we talk about, finding proper places for these people to stay, we're not often talking about people who really live here because the people making the decisions don't often know that here don't have housing. And so I just want to put that forth as a person who sits on this board, also grew up here, works in the schools. I was on the Housing Authority when we did the housing production plan. I was the chair of the committee when we did the local comprehensive plan. I've done a lot of outreach in this town. And the housing crisis here is untenable. Everyone is living. And we're not going to have people to care for us or work in our establishments in very soon. Many places are closing down for winter and things like that. So I just wanted to put that forward because I think sometimes that's not said in that way. And there is a real there are people, it's not about housing people who live somewhere else. It's about the people who live right here, who are on each other's couches, living in each other's basements, not knowing where they're going to be in the fall or in the spring when they have to.
Well said. Commissioner Bergstrom.
Yeah, just, I think we have to put this in perspective. I didn't really see something. Yeah, I guess we all think we do. So we're not talking about housing, it's a million houses in the village. We're talking about housing that's available to people. That is the real issue. We can build and build, but once we target certain populations, all that, we're not gonna gain it. We're also gonna actually make this work. So, I think besides building, and I agree that the big projects are coming from. Thing we can to discourage large projects. There are small projects being done. We did to the important budget here, but when the ARPA funds. But we may have to find ways of transitioning our housing stock. Part-time residents. Airbnb, short-term rentals into year-round housing. It's difficult to pick a lot of that. We have to do it, otherwise it's going to be the same. You have the people with the choices. Some winter, supposed to be. Yeah, it's a complicated issue. We have to transition out of our houses. Part-time and short-term. I came to, first time I came to the Cape, like this, years ago, I think I did myself a sunset, Burrow Center. So I turned it off. And I say, it must be around it as well. You don't have a big urban center. I have such people. So I see what they do.
I would just add to that, and I don't know if the county anyway, certainly seasonal communities helps, but one of the things that has been really critical in our discussions is how do we pay for attainable housing, it's tax credits and so on, capital A affordable housing. We have a lot of people who do not qualify for capital A affordable housing, but these are the people that Mara's talked about. The middle income, couples who earn two incomes, they make too much money to qualify and they can't live here and they're leaving. And there are plumbers and electricians and caregivers and teachers and firefighters and police officers. And we really need to find a way to get money to build housing to accommodate those people. It's critical. And we've done Cloverleaf is almost all capital A affordable housing, 39 to 43 units. We've done nothing to help the missing population, and that, in my view, is really critical.
When the ARP funds came down to us, the issue, half of them were given to the county. Half of them to the town. Demeaning anyone, but the pressure on us was so many of the towns have since taken money they did that they folded into the nothing. That's what your parents did. Three of us stood for so we have been used for regional issues. We get one-time pot of money, we can do what we can to do things. Only if we can get $11 billion to fill the housing. It's a one-time shot. I wish I had another one. I don't, but the opportunities may come. There are things, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that your town and the other towns, East Town, we are doing things. We are having small projects. For town meeting, sometimes it's nice. But there is an effort there, and things are good.
Did anybody else want to? No, I think it's helpful for you to understand that sometimes when the county's developing an initiative, we're often not the most well received. up at the State House or elsewhere, because counties, most counties are somewhat either been phased out of existence, or they didn't do much at all. Barnstable County methods could be unique. We have a whole array of services and programs that we provide to our communities, to the residents of Barnstable. And oftentimes it's a real struggle for us to try to be able to be treated. It's almost like I feel like we're the Rodney Dangerfield. So the government is treated with just don't respect. No, because sometimes counties are excluded from applying for funds. One of the things that we can do well for Cape Towns is apply for monies from the federal government and state government. Federal government, we're very in providing monies that we can in turn make available to the towns. But in the state of Massachusetts, there are a multitude of programs where counties are just completely ineligible or unable to apply. So like a stigma in Massachusetts, and some of that is because of the legacy of some of the other counties in Massachusetts that really didn't function well. And so that still is a barrier challenge for us. Bless you. In these meetings and this has all been incredibly helpful. But I want, before we go on to the other parts of the agenda, I want to say that anything else that you're working on that you're addressing, but we should really zero in on as a priority. As you can see in the rest of the agenda, we have we want to give we want an update on the forestry and wildfire management program. We know that's a priority here. We have heard from many Truro residents and officials about the importance of this. So put that first up. And then after that, we're going to give an update on AmeriCorps, some of the work that's going on in Truro, but it'll be a broad overview. But there may be ideas about what we're doing in AmeriCorps that may be applicable here in Truro. So as you're looking at that presentation, be brainstorming a little bit, thinking of maybe some other ways which are easy and it can be a help. And then Brian is going to update us on awards. We're really trying to acknowledge the hard work of so many on Cape Cod that are out there working to protect our water supplies. So Brian will give an announcement on how we're doing with a final candidate, list of candidates who will be getting those awards. We've asked the County Health and Environmental Department to talk about testing capabilities. Ron had mentioned the ARPA funds. One of our priorities as a board was to insist on improving our equipment at the lab. So you're going to get an update on what we're doing at your county lab in the kind of testing that we can do, that we can provide, because we want to have not only the latest and state-of-the-art equipment, but we want to be able to help, particularly those with private wells, understand if there's a contamination issue, something concerned about, that they can get affordable tests done on their well. And so we're able to do that. So you get an update on that. And then we want to talk a little bit more about this whole topic of carrying capacity. And we'll have plenty more to talk about on school. But another topic or something that you'd like to talk about, what I'd like to do is move on to the other part of the agenda and sort of get the wildfire presentation up and get some of these other presentations up. So why don't we do this? Why don't we move on to the we're going to call it Mike McGuire and our forestry and wildfire management teams. And I think we have some folks from the state here. Is there somebody here from DCR?
Yep.
Josh Nigro.
Yes.
Great.
My thoughts,
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll have Josh come up in a minute.
Okay, that's great. So we're going to turn it over to you, Michael, and for your presentation.
And in the interest of time, I've asked for us to prepare a brief wildfire presentation to you. My name is Mike McGuire. I'm the director of the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, which is a department of Barnstable County. For those of you that have worked with the county before, you may have worked with some of our Sea Grant folks and coastal erosion issues. You may have worked with our horticulture program, which Russ runs, and Master Gardeners and run out of our office, and AmeriCorps is out of the office. So think of us as a natural resource management department of the county. In preparation for this meeting, I will say I did the history of Barnstable County and wildfires in Cape Cod, and certainly on the Outer Cape, actually well predates me. I started in the county in '99. In 1954, Barnstable County actually bought a Piper Super Cub plane and was running
aerial surveys for wildfire. We've actually owned 2 planes. The last time we had was in the 90s. I am not here to announce that we're buying another. We don't need those anymore. We get drones. But there's a really strong infrastructure of local, county, state, and sometimes federal resources that come in to work on wildfire prevention. It's one of these items that comes up every 10 to 15 years. County did a wildfire plan in 2012, and we looked at it and have been working for 5 years to get money to update the plan. Russ is going to discuss that. And I do want to reassure that everyone that's listening to this presentation in this community that we work very closely with each of the towns and with the state and with the seashore to make sure that all of these efforts aren't happening in chambers. They're not isolated. We're all working collaboratively to address this very important issue in this community. And certainly, as we saw with the blizzard, anytime you have a natural disaster that threatens our natural resources, human impact is very real, and Truro is going to be, the impact is going to be very significant here. And we at the county are aware of that, and Andy and I work very closely together, and we're always aware of that as we're working at the Regional Emergency Planning Center. So
I also just don't want to eliminate or not mention the other partner, which is the National Seashore,
Yes.
which is a huge partner here and in Northleaf, and they're also in this. So
they are, and Superintendent Flynn we've communicated with her, and she would like to be here. She's out right now. So, but they were invited to the meeting. They have participated in the past and other
yes,
meetings.
right.
I'll let Russ take it away.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Russ Norton. As Mike said, I work for Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. I'm an extension educator, and I work a lot with land resources. So I'm going to be leading a portion of this effort on a community wildfire protection plan, or a new one, an update to the old one, which really is a big win for all the communities of Cape and Truro, as it's going to provide resources for us to make a safer place, basically. So I want to start out with just like a little bit of background. We hear about wildfire a lot on the news, but we don't hear about wildfire on Cape Cod a lot in the news, right? We think about it as a Western, California issue, dry places. But there is a long history of wildfire on Cape Cod. It's actually thousands of years in which wildfire has occurred on Cape Cod. And so that's a really important aspect to think that it's part of our normal community. And we know a little bit about what happened pre-colonial, from taking sediments of ponds and looking at the charcoal records and those sediments. We also know that Native Americans used to burn portions of the land to increase hunting areas and allow for travel. From the pre-colonial piece to kind of the colonial area to the 1900s, there was a huge increase in frequency of wildfire on the Cape. And a lot of that had to do with different land management practices that were done at the time, but also simple things like locomotives in the railroad industry. The engines that used to burn used to actually have ambers that would come out their smokestacks. And that actually was a big source of wildfires on Cape Cod. And so, just looking back from historical, in 1887, there were a lot of wildfires that occurred in that particular year. And on Cape Cod, that was something like 75,000 acres. One of those fires was about 25,000 acres. Just to give you an idea of the size, Cape Cod in its entirety is around 200,000 acres. So we're talking about a large proportion of the overall land mass. And just so we're all on the same page here, what are we talking about with wildfires? We're talking about, uncontrolled fires in forest and grasslands and brushlands. So that's what we're talking about. And so as we kind of go into the early 1900s, and the community started to change, less from an agrarian community to more of a tourism community, there was a lot done suppression-wise. So Mike mentioned the plane, but before that, we had fire towers. We had fire towers, and then we also have the iconic brush breakers, which were very important to response and suppression of wildfire. So we saw, a decrease starting in the early 1900s. That doesn't mean we still didn't have fire. This picture in the background of this slide is from a great series of videos put together by GCR on the 1946 fire. So if you haven't checked out those videos, it's a series of 4 videos. I highly encourage you to. They're very informative from a historic perspective. But even now, so recently, just talking with Josh Nigro, we see more than 100 wildfires each year on Cape Cod. They aren't large, they aren't 15,000 acres. Usually they're smaller than a quarter of an acre, but they're still important. And that kind of leads us to the next part of the discussion, and that is our ecosystem here on Cape Cod. So we live in a place that is probably recognizable to all of you, but it's a little bit different than much of the rest of Massachusetts. It looks different, right? So if you're to drive from Provincetown to Pittsfield, you will notice the changes in the topography and the tree species. And what we have here is pitch pine barrens, and those systems are disturbance systems. So what keeps them healthy is disturbance, and a big part of that disturbance is fire. And those species that occur in those pine barrens are what we call fire adapted species. So pitch pine, kind of a notorious plant here on Cape Cod, is resistant to fire. It has a thick bark, right? And that keeps it, allows it to survive during what would be low intensity fires of the underbrush. These fire adapted species, we mean by fire adapted species, the species that are able to regenerate and survive fire, right? So they're a really important part of our overall ecosystem, but they're also highly flammable. Right, so these species actually will encourage fire, so they have flammable parts. Which kind of leads us to, again, another historical photo of how fires that may start in underbrush, if they reach the canopies of pitch pine, which are highly flammable, then we have a much more damaging fire. So as we suppress fire, we have the potential for the fuels that fuel fire to increase. So fire is actually a really important piece. That's why we do a lot of prescribed burning on Cape Cod, is to reduce that fuel load and reduce the potential for severe or highly damaging fires. So kind of coming all around here back to kind of the community wildfire plan. We have a lot of fires. Potential for a lot of fires. We don't see a lot here on the Cape Cod because of the suppression, but there's a huge amount of risk. This is a flammable area, and the potential for a damaging wildfire is out there. And what this picture shows, it's actually from the 2012 Community Wildfire Protection Plan. It shows the wildlands in green, at least the really large tracts that are uninhabited, but then in 2 shades of red, it shows where populations, neighborhoods, and homes are adjacent to these wildlands, or where they're mixed into those wildlands. And those are the areas highest at risk. So if you're looking at this map, you can see that there's a lot of red in that. And those are areas that are at risk. And when I say at risk, what are we talking about? Public safety, infrastructure, all those things are at risk of being damaged by wildfire. So our last community wildfire plan was in 2012. It was a great resource. It brought a lot of people together. Predecessor to our department, Bill Clark, who many of you might know, led this effort, and he was really good at bringing up all the cooperators in the community together. So folks like Josh Nigro, folks from the seashore, folks from the base, but also all the local fire departments came together to help with this plan and make sure that we are addressing local needs, but also the greater need on Cape Cod. And so we have been awarded a $143,000 grant from the USDA's Community Defense Wildfire Grant Program to come out with a new plan that will have updated information that we will use to inform our strategies to fight wildfire in the future. So some of those goals of this plan are to update those wildfire risk maps. That's a key piece of this. So mapping is hugely important. It also allows for hazard ranking and prioritization for every town, how they're going to go about potentially managing issues. They're going to come out with town-specific preparedness strategies. And these are really important because these are going to actually be formatted so they can be integrated into each town's hazard management plans. So an important piece of incorporating wildfire into those. It's going to create an online hub, a resource that can be used by everyone. So that's public officials, that's fire departments, to map, but also to give a lot of tips and resources of how they can prepare and be prepared for wildfire. We will be going through the process of coordinating all those resources. Again, the National Seashore Patrol is a hugely important land partner here and in preparing for wildfire. And then that will lead to supporting fuel reduction projects, which is really kind of mitigating the risk and outreach. So Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, this is our wheelhouse, right? Education and outreach. This is what we do. So a lot of it will be bringing all those collaborators together, but it'll also be reaching out to the community because wildfire might not be on the top of everyone's mind. Right? And so we're going to try to bring that awareness about so that people are aware that there is some risks locally. This is just examples of a brochure as well as how homeowners. So, wildfire isn't just a wildland manager issue. It's not just a fire department issue, but it's an everyone in the community issue. And so there are a lot of things that individuals can do to protect their own properties and start doing that education outreach about what individuals can do. And wrapping things up, this is from the 2012 Community Wildfire Protection Plan. It's a map of risk. So you have the highest risk areas in red. We're going to be updating these maps so we can identify those highest risk areas. And then those are the places where mitigation efforts are going to be focused. And so what does mitigation look like? Mitigation in the best case scenario is usually prescribed fire, right? Because when we use prescribed fire on the land, we're reducing the fuel loads that are there, which will lead to less damaging fires when they do occur. But they also support our local ecosystem because it's adapted to fire. So those species that need fire as part of their life cycle are encouraged. And so it's an overall win-win. There are other mitigation strategies, mechanical ones where tree thinning or mowing of vegetation is used. But in many cases, where allowable, prescribed fire is an ideal situation. And so that's kind of where we're heading. So we plan on releasing the RFP as we search for contractors to help guide us through this process of creating this plan and putting together a group of cooperators here in the very near future. And then we'll probably be going out to a lot of the towns to get feedback and share what they should be thinking about as it pertains to wildfire in our local communities. So with that, I don't know if you have.
That's great. My quick question for you.
Yeah.
When do we expect to have a plan done?
So I would say we are hoping to have that RFP released soon. Once it is awarded, we're looking at a year. So a year from this fall, I would hope to have something in meeting. Yeah. So hope to have something in hand that we can all take a look into.
That's great. Thanks, Chris. What I'd like to do for questions is start, if you have somebody else.
I was just, Chief Collins just sat through an hour and a half of us and
Okay.
I don't know, he's been such a great partner in the past. I don't know, I wanted to give him and Josh Monagro a chance to just
Go
mention.
right ahead. Their role.
So I don't want to put you on the spot.
Oh, no. The town works in cooperation with DCR. We do a residential home inspection program. One of our chair took advantage of that. When DCR went onto your house and identify areas that may be a concern, you can speak to the spacing if you want. One of the problems that I see is we've lost that federal resource. They are no longer for the Park Service. What do they now do?
The National Wildland Fire Service.
So they no longer work for the park. So we've lost our fire management officer. And then our ability to go in, especially in the seashore, I can't cut down a tree without permission. We have to have somebody come out and say, if you can, and we can't. So I think, we also need that federal portion. And I think that's where you folks have the big hammer, so to speak, when it comes to that. I think we're very fortunate that we've had a great fire management program here. DCR has been incredible. And as Dave Perry used to say, small fires help prevent big fires. So and that's good propagation. So I just think that the county's done a great job of us providing us with equipment and resources, and DCR has been invaluable. Chainsaw training, prescribed burns, you name it, rural water supply. It's been a collaborative effort, and my hat's off to the county. So, and people should be appreciative of what these people bring to the table.
Thanks.
Here.
John?
I will say is the reason why things work so well in parks and towns is it's really a flat background. Everybody just works together. It's not done within a vacuum. And one of the big key parts of this consensus plan is to get the public involved. One of the big things in the piece of that puzzle would be where we need to hone in with homeowners. In those subdivisions, those areas where they're going to be separate, to have our fall out so that we can educate those homeowners so they can help us, help them in case of a wildfire. As far as plan, the other couple of key pieces to this is the federal government is giving that 143 plus TCR is pulling up another, I think, 45,000 to that. And there's some talk of the tribe. So that's another with that too. With that plan, it's really going to give us a really good foundation for we don't know what we don't know. And a new fire chief, a new resident coming into town, we're able to take that plan and really kind of look at that risk. And it's one of those plans that just doesn't sit and shut. We were just using it at the Boston County Fair last month. We'll over some of those maps. Used last year, we actually had a meeting at the time last year for the forum and action committee. We had that big presentation. And then the other big thing as far as I'm not going to talk directly about the seashore, but one of the things that we're doing with DCR is helping build capacity of those things. We just worked with Provincetown and they actually put a forestry truck in a service. Doing a lot of training with them. Same thing with, Toro back in the day, the prior to shore was kind of just cheaper problem. But building that capacity for the responders has been a big part of it. So they are ready to give the fires.
One of the other things that really is important about this study, when I go to write a federal grant, I can cite this study. And the study, I can't say it's 12 years old, I'll say it's brand new. So that information also benefits us from getting up for getting grants.
And one last thing is that first map you showed with the risk for the Cape. That map has been drastically different than the new version. There was some inputs that they used on the last plan and some different fuel modeling that was not up to date. Now there's some updated data. We're really going to see we're going to see a lot more. Risks.
Are you ready for more questions? I'm going to start with the Truro board, then we're going to come over to the commissioners, and then we're going to open it up to the public.
Thank you. If I may, I wanted to express my gratitude as well for the Firewise. I call it training, education and outreach. Free, available to anyone. Probably about 45 minutes, maybe. My home is right in the middle of that red, as is probably most people sitting in this room. And it was extraordinarily helpful. I'm very grateful, and anything we can do, all of us, to get this information out there. I don't know why anybody would not take advantage of this.
Yes. And I just want to make sure I heard correctly. So the Seashore no longer has, they were working to get fire people on staff. They had one person who was up in Maine, and then that person moved here and they were trying to hire people. Are you saying that there was no longer any fire?
What had happened is they no longer fall under the Park Service. They are under their own newly created department, federally created department. So we're going to see who moves where. But right now we've got one.
So the person that did the engine box, but they just left and moved back to California last week. So there is an opening. I did reach out to the FMO up at Acadia. They are planning to repost that position and try to get the person back in. And then
What I will say is, the person that just like did write he did a pretty comprehensive, survey of the fire roads of the park. And some of that, and he did put together some sort of, prioritization for the park and the fire roads and what areas to do.
Because we found that when we came out, roads are not passable. So this one, what you came up with was really essential in identifying areas that we need to focus on. It says there's a path there, and if not, you need to, and I'm sure that the new maps will incorporate that.
So I have two follow-up questions to that. Number one, is that report that you did public? Because if it is, it would be really great. I know there's a lot of interest in Truro. Josh and Tim and various other people did a program at the Truro Meeting House in addition to the climate action program. It would be really great if that information could get out. And I don't know if it can.
That's the trouble.
Yes.
The second follow-up question to that is, it feels like if we don't know who can act. I know, for example, there are a whole bunch of people who have recently gone through fire training. My husband is one, they're certified not to do the fires in the west, but to fight fires around here. Got all the equipment, training. You know, are those people who have gotten the training not able to do work in this area as they had hoped because of the uncertainty about the seashore access?
I think that might be a Kelly question, because I don't know what the liability to that is.
I'm not sure we have to do it.
Well, that's something that, we can look into it in the plan, right? So the plan itself is an action plan, but it's gonna identify the needs and the gaps. So those are crucial things that hopefully we find out in the plan and allow us to be able to, either come up with plans to fix those issues, but also just define them, like who can work on that. I don't know if Josh, you have to make
They were, it's the kind of chipmunk for going back to the.
No, they were the woodchucks. It's a whole different thing.
Okay, we did one of that. So it's actually already doing that.
Yes.
Yeah, trying to get that. Once hopefully they get another primary person in, they can. It was more of an issue. And then just one last thing, as part of the plan, the recommendations, like I said, there's gonna be a piece for each town. So all the concerns referring, and specifically the water supply, all those things will be specifically for each town. Can you just have that input to put in?
Very valuable.
Another question over there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I just had a question when that report was generated. And they did the assessment. Company. Was that assessment done before or after the blizzard? Because if anybody is going through the National Seashore now, although a lot of the trees were taken care of, roadways that we could control. There is, and I'm sure it's that way on the other Cape towns, but Truro, there was so much damage there. And those things are because now you compound it with drought. Everything is like fresh from.
And what I was saying about that in our conversations, we've actually had to go out and help clear some of the fire roads. There is between the Forest Service is an internal thing of definitions of what is a fire road, what is an access road, and what departments within the seashore, roads and ground, roads and trails versus the fire road of the responsibility. And that's an internal against people.
I was in touch with the park after the storms because I had received complaints about certain paths not being able to walk on. They felt that they could be in danger. I reached out to the seashore and the extent of the damage from that storm. They said it's going to take years to clean up, and a path is an extremely low priority compared to maintaining fire roads or access to the area. So they're going to get to the paths, but that's not on their top priority list.
Yeah, and so I'm less concerned about, I'm very concerned about a fire road, less about a path for recreation. I'm more concerned about creating an environment that's susceptible to fire starting. Wind, dry conditions, and the wood, the vegetation, dry vegetation is already. And then you can't get to it, but like, how do you? Is it a prescriber? Is it volunteers in the community?
There's one recommendation that we'd like to make part of this plan that we do probably do that. And one of the recommendations that I have in the report is just a GPS on the fire.
We have to go actually walk them. To call them through to make sure that there's bags are actually there.
Yeah.
Follow on, whatever he was talking about, Chair, probably to the chief. Do you consider the academy as in creating proper training? Or is it only if they're assigned to train or wildfire training like this? Is there for both the safety office and environment? So is it good enough?
So the real recruit is designed to teach the basics to everybody. So that a firefighter in Truro operates the same as a firefighter in Renton. It's not geared towards wildland firefighting, but that's where I pick up the phone and call Josh. And because of these county resources, he can come out and do chainsaw training with us. He can come out and do prescribed burnings, do water supply. You know, wildland fires are a unique animal. They're very different than structural fires. But I think what the county and what everybody here is concerned is public and interface. Like a rural urban interface where your house is now in that town. You know, my neighbors are from Australia and they are extremely concerned about wildfires after what happened where they came from. So, you know, we constantly train and we're lucky enough to have these resources. We aggressively pursue grants. And, you know, we're fortunate enough, I think, because of the vegetation out here and the conditioning a little bit more humidity levels out here. That's not to say that we couldn't have a big fire. But we have, like you said, we don't have a plane. But we do have, you know, we received a grant for a very, very intense drone. There's thermal imaging capabilities and we can use that. And we also have, and Josh spoke to, we have a very robust mutual aid system here. I came from Arcade where if we have a fire in Truro, trust me, everything starts moving. So we have our regional partners, we have our state partners. Hopefully we don't need federal intervention with something, but I think we have a good handle.
To speak to the training aspect, our wildland training would cover SB 3190. Out of 50 states, Massachusetts is one of the few states where it's not part of the fire 1 and 2 curriculum of the fire academy. A bunch of towns within the Cape, I was actually just doing training this morning for Tom Fire, Joint Fire, Fire are making it a requirement to get that training, but they're going to one of their firefighters to get that in the as a follow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners. Commissioner Lyons.
You know, I was fortunate enough to attend that Truro event last year with the energy and conservation. And there was a lot of good information. Dave Carey was there and he gave a very good overview, but he was also saying that, you know, this is where you have to be very mindful about your development because we are creating conditions where we're putting more people into, we're tearing down places, we're clearing area. The more you do that in contiguous forest, you're weakening the forest, you're making it more susceptible to fire. Believe it or not, you would think maybe less trees, not so. And then there's the water issue if you do have these massive fires. So you have more development, more use of water and fire funds. Truro, we had superintendents before us our last meeting, and that was one of his biggest concern was with the amount of development that has happened and was being proposed. He said, you know, if we really had a massive fire, we may not be able to address it because we wouldn't have that water pressure to be able to put it out. So you know, we have a lot of needs and we have a lot of wants and a lot of desires, but we can't do everything we think should happen. And there's a reason this is the National Seashore. Can you imagine if the National Seashore was never created, what Truro would look like and what Wellfleet would look like? Wellfleet was way ahead on allowing people to have homes that they don't live in. And if everyone came and lived in those homes, we would be done. Never mind build for people. And we do have to look at those people who live here as opposed to, I think the models that are being presented to us to use aren't really the right fit for our communities. We know that we have these needs for housing, but this, if you're going to do it through the state, you have to do something big and dense, and that's not quite fitting the need. So there's a lot of things to think about. In addition to, if we had a fire, how many roads do we have to leave? We have one. And we've already had traffic like we've never seen before on the Outer Cape. It may be because there was a new road design and everyone's confused and, you know, Wellfleet finally has, you know, at nighttime you can see the lane, but that's not really helping people during the day for some reason. But we would be in big trouble. So there are a lot of things to think about together when we're thinking about how we're going to plan our communities going forward. Are we a tourist community or are we a year-round community? This place has never really been a big population year-round community. It has been its community. Happy to see everyone come, happy to have you enjoy yourself, and happy to see you leave. But those days are changing because we're all falling in love with Cape Cod and therefore loving it to death. So we have to be very mindful because we're running out of all of these resources and we have to be very careful with them. And I just, that really was impressed upon me in that last session that we had. That was very, very informative, and as is this. So I look forward, it'll be amazing to see how much development has happened since just 2012 on the Outer Cape when this study comes.
A lot of changes,
A
right?
lot of changes.
Climate
And a lot more
changes,
high risk.
infrastructure, people, a
For
lot
more
of changes.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You know, suppression is the last thing that we want to do.
Right.
Prevention and education is something that we have control of. And the better we do that with studies like this, I think the better the public will feel about that. And I can't speak enough about Josh's home inspection program. It's no cost. They come out, they take a look at your property. They're not gonna come out and tell you gotta tear up all your hydrangeas and do all this.
Right.
But they're gonna tell you that these are what we consider best practices, and you do what you can or what you choose to for your property.
To create sort of a buffer. So I had, actually the superintendent, it was in my neighborhood and I was talking to her and I have a hard time cutting down trees and I have a lot of them and they're threatening. You know, I was lucky this storm, big branches did not hit the house, but they will eventually. And I have a hard time cutting down trees. You know, we all have a tree hugger, I guess. And I worry about the birds but I have a whole forest behind me and I'm lucky because I am somewhat protected. And she said, you have to understand these trees have a lifespan of about 70 to 90 years. So they're ready to go anyway. Don't feel bad. But the other ones generated out there where you don't want them. So if anybody feels like me, take that and cut down those trees to make my home a little bit more safe.
Commissioner Bergstrom.
Just to say that, you know, oftentimes people ask us, what's the Marshall County to do this? And, you know, there's big issues in front of us, obviously housing, so. But I think we shouldn't overlook programs like this and other programs that are so provide a lot of valuable resources. It's good to hear people in Furrow and their staff say how helpful the county has been of our resource they provide. That's really right here. So good to hear. It's the tool you don't have if you don't have a county. You don't have this county. So we're happy to do it if we can. And this service. Hopefully we'll never need it, but when you do, it's there. Thank you.
I want to have a few minutes for folks in the audience, if there's anybody in public, maybe Truro resident. Do you have any questions? Yes.
very much appreciate all the information warnings that you give. There are two practical things that I wonder if other residents aren't concerned about. The first has to do, brought up by the question of the blizzard. On our roads, there's much larger debris remaining, even on the private roads, if we're going to call the residential roads. Right, that are larger than the town will allow us to deposit in the dump, so we don't have a place to put that brush. And that creates a looming hazard that we could all be at risk with. The other thing is, I sit in my garden and I look at all the lovely trees I have, and I think every leaf is going to have to be removed. Somewhere, sometime, someplace, and where's it going? Because we don't have burn capacity on private residences to burn off the top layers and the accumulating layers underneath, which of course generate heat. So I'm wondering if in thinking about fire protection, fire mitigation and resource uses, if we couldn't think either in the town or collectively about how we might make it easier for residential properties and even commercial properties in some of these situations to get rid of the potentially damaging and inflammable natural debris that's accumulating much faster than we thought around our properties.
Excellent question. Russ?
Yeah, so I mean, there.
Knock it out of the park. Russ. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I think a big piece about this is educating people how they can make their space defensively. But there's also other resources out there. So we have a robust industry for land management here in the Cape Cod. And so you can hire folks to come and maintain your trees and shrubs as well. So when there's debris, we do have capacity. It might not be free available through the town, but there is capacity there for maintenance of the private property. Sure.
Yeah, I think during,
It would be expensive.
Yeah.
I personally don't know my property, I can tell you many of my neighbors.
Yeah. it's a serious problem. I think with this recent storm, one of the things that at least I've observed, and I'm sure a lot of other people have as well, tremendous amount of tree damage, and there's still places, as you mentioned.
It's gonna take a long time.
I understand, but I do think during this planning process, as we're getting above, looking at the risks and the hazards, the things that we can fix, and I think this is something that we definitely need to explain that to. Josh, did you want to
Yeah, I
answer?
wanted to add one thing. Right now in the county of Garnet, we actually have a curtain burner being used by Cape Cod Fire. It's kind of our test pilot. We used it on Vineyard last year, first one that DEP gave us the permit to be able to use. If this is successful, and what a curtain burner is a big dumpster down there, a little bit, and you put debris in, so all the big stuff, all that big stuff we get in apartments. If this is a successful problem, which I think it is, I think we'll see town being able to implement something like that by collecting, stuff on transfer station and give it a this. So there's going to be the way that we can get in the state man and such. Start finding, especially if we have the next blizzard and the amount of debris that's in the.
So let me ask, just a follow up, and it's Rita, right? Okay, if this works, will other towns be able to collect and bring
Yeah,
debris too?
yeah.
Okay.
And Robert B. Moore is actually in the process right now. He wants to buy a big one also. It's separated at his facility,
I was surprised there, right?
but also local towns would then be able to use that.
All right, so it's being worked on. Okay, great.
Also,
Yes, sir.
residential burning season in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that goes from January to May 1st. But realize that residential burning, and I'm sure with this project, that's all governed by DEP. So we don't have a say in the regulations are set by DEP, and that's why I believe John said they're gonna make the pitch to DEP that, hey, this works. And we need, so, but there is options for residential burning. You can't use residential burning for land clearing. You can't decide that if you got an acre of woods and you want to have a half acre. It's not to be used for that. It's for brush only.
Okay, that's good to know. Anybody else in the audience? Did you want? Is there somebody else over here?
Yeah, just one sentence.
think we're good.
Okay.
I just want to basically say thank you for your presentation. And I want to thank Josh, thanks for your support as well, and all of our partners. And obviously, we got to clone your fire chief here because he's incredibly resourceful. So more to come. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right.
Good job, guys.
Little round of applause. Now, the next item, 6B on our agenda, Barnstable County Cape Cod AmeriCorps FY 26, a service year review. And proposed planning, we're gonna have Misty Haymeyer come up and give us an update on how things are going there. And we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the great work that we've done in Truro with our
Thank you guys so much for both the town of Truro and to the commissioners and chair. Sorry, I'll talk louder. Just trying to make sure I can connect here. There we go. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'll start for those who are not as familiar with the AmeriCorps program. I'll just start with a very brief overview. Wonderful. I did that. My computer is being very unresponsive. Okay, there we go. So I just to start with a brief overview of the AmeriCorps Cape Cod program. We are a national service program that is managed locally by the county, but we do rely on federal funds as part of the AmeriCorps program. And we are a residential program that brings in about 20 young professionals to work in support capacity here on the Cape for municipalities and local organizations to in the areas of natural resource management, emergency management, environmental education, and community engagement. So our young professionals join our program, they get trained up, and then they support many of our municipalities and the county in their efforts to take care of these really important tasks in those focus areas. And so this year, we started off with a little bit of a rocky start because last year we lost our federal funding, gained our federal funding back, but we were unsure what the funding situation was going to look like. However, it got off to a really great start. We had 18 amazing members this year, and we had really a stellar year. So we're very, and we just wrapped it up a few weeks ago. So we're just now in the transition period. So we don't have any members currently right now, so it's a little quieter than normal, but we're gearing up for our program to start shortly. My computer's working real well today, so just right. No, I can just give it all from memory if I need to, but it's just not responding. I don't think. Yeah, seconds. There we go. It's just going to be really slow. Okay. So our year by the numbers, we had a really great year. So we had some impressive numbers. This is our 27th year that we just completed of our program. We just graduated 18 members, and that now brings our total alumni to over 600 alumni from our program. And many of them, several of them are here in the room as well. And this year, our members met and exceeded their 1,700 hours that they're required. So they did over 31,000 hours of service just this year. And that basically resulted in 170 group service projects throughout the year. And then kind of blows my mind, it's one of the bigger numbers we've had, about 6,000 acres improved, 115 miles of areas improved. And then our members also served in 30 individual placements throughout the Cape. So projects by town, this is kind of breaks up our 170 projects by each town. So there's Truro with 6 projects this year, which primarily was sustainable Cape invasive species removal throughout the town, and then also some Wet Fest programming in your local schools, just to name a few. And so so the numbers are great, they look wonderful, but what does that mean? What does it look like? So this, it looks like many hours of service in community projects that our team did. This is our MLK Junior Day event that we held in January. That was a very successful clothing drive and coat drive for our community. And it's a lot of field work, they spend a good majority of their time in their group service projects outside, working on to protect the natural resources here on the Cape. That included a lot of training with DCR, with wildland fire training, and some work on some controlled burns. We also do disaster response or marine mammal rescue response as part of our disaster response. And our members took a refresher because it was a quieter year for that team, just in time to be ready for the 32 bottlenose dolphin training that happened here on the Outer Cape. So our team was able to help them, especially with those larger events that happen. The AmeriCorps members are able to support those efforts. And it's also included a significant amount of weekend service. Our members aren't required to, but are encouraged to do weekend events, and they pretty much serve on either one or multiple service projects on the weekends as well. That includes a lot of town events like Dennis Conservation Celebration, Wellfleet Oyster Fest. They support Harwich Tour to Trash, Brewster Conservation Day, Canal Cleanup Day across the Cape. So a lot of these town events are supported heavily by AmeriCorps members throughout the year. They also participated in research conservation projects like with Hui with their ongoing kelp project to see if kelp can kind of run or help support the world. And then our Wet Fest program is, as we're talking about a lot of water quality issues, is a really important program that we try to, our members basically helped encourage 800 students across the Cape, including here in Truro, to be better guardians of our sole source aquifer here. So kind of teach them what it means, what our problems are here through fun activities and a really fun little presentation that they give. And they have all the students pledge to protect our water systems here. And so that is a program that we are hoping to try to build back up again. We had fewer schools this year, somewhat due to the winter closures. We couldn't get to all the schools that we were hoping to this year with the weather that we had. We are trying to kind of update that program and build it back up. And then, of course, everyone here is aware of the winter storm impacts, and our AmeriCorps members were basically one of the primary resources at all of the 4 regional shelters, including at Nauset. While it was open, they helped get that open and run it until it got transferred to DY. So our members were there for over 100 hours, and all of our staff, we're a big part of making sure that response happened this year. And now they have shifted to the preparedness part, and they have been working with Andy and the emergency management department to basically make sure we're ready for the next one. So they've been digging through all those Conex boxes, giving them an inventory, and making sure we're ready to go. And then just to cover some of our, what we do, a lot of our program, our group service projects does is a lot of shell fishing. So a significant amount of projects in Wellfleet. That's one of the towns that has some of the biggest projects, and that's mostly shell fishing work that we support the town with. And then a significant amount of trail clearing, controlled burns with DCR and other, especially this year post-storm, there was a big uptick in the amount of trail clearing and debris clearing that our members did do. But it's pretty impressive what 18 or 20 very highly motivated, skilled young professionals can do. And I think they actually tend to surprise people and can do a lot more than people expect them to. So it's been a pretty impressive year. So our individual placements are across the Cape with municipalities, with the county, with state, federal orgs, including National Park Service. They have a placement every year, and nonprofit organizations. This is the breakout there. And just to highlight a few, one of our members worked with the Center for Coastal Studies and actually presented some of her green crab research work that she did at a meeting off Cape. And then Elena worked with the Friends of Mashpee, losing my words here today, with the Friends of Mashpee Wildlife Refuge, and actually presented on the history of that. She gave talks across that area, including about our own chair Forrest's involvement in getting that started. Additionally, one of our members that works with IFOB helped capture and rescue 2 seals off Monomoy that were entangled that likely would have died. So our members are doing really incredible work in helping building capacity with each of the placements that they serve. And then we wrapped up a few weeks ago with a really wonderful graduation that Chair Forrest and Senator Fernandez spoke at. And we had an amazing turnout. And it's always kind of bittersweet because it's been a wonderful year. And then they all head off to their different places. But we have one of the really great things about our program is that it's a feeder into the local workforce in those focus areas. And so a significant amount of our members end up staying here on the Cape and working in these areas. And so one of our members is going to continue with Falmouth Shellfish and continue some research projects that he's been working on. Jordan, Ella is going to be coming back to the seashore to work at their scientists in the park program this fall. And then one of our members is going to grad school to teach elementary education and with an environmental education focus. Then we have two members, including Lillian, who's at our Wellfleet House this year. That's going to be our program supervisor at the Wellfleet House this year, which is a Park Service property that they leased to us that we're very grateful for, because that's being able to provide housing, as you guys are talking about housing issues, is pretty much one of the primary reasons our program is as successful as it is and probably still continuing because we are able to provide that housing. And then we have another member that's joining another local AmeriCorps program called TerraCorps that places members with organizations and should be working with the 300 committee this year. And then we are fully funded for the next 3 years, which we're really grateful for. So that gives us a little bit of a breather so that we can focus on the program, supporting the communities, and worry less about where funding is going to come from for the next few years, which, to be honest, very much surprised me a bit with given the current climate. So what's to come? So year 28, we are starting in October, on October 1st, I'll run through mid-August of 2027. And we will be having 20 members this year, and we'll be placing them with 32 individual placements. The number isn't as great because some of the groups like DCR and our emergency management team have combined efforts. So we're maximize that effort, but we'll have some new placements with Falmouth Recycling Committee and with the Barnstable Human Rights Committee having placements this year. And we'll have our swearing in ceremony in early November, on November 5th. So we invite and welcome everyone to join. And some of our focus areas that we're trying to focus on and align with county priorities is emergency management support. So we're definitely kind of looking at our program and how can we support those efforts. And then also with wildland fire management, of course, because we'll be a big part of that plan as it's coming through, but also trying to do an earlier start with some of our training with working with Josh. And while members in the past have had the opportunity to get their Red Card certification, we're going to try to build that into the program. So we kind of build the capacity of folks that can respond here. So that is all I have. Thank you.
Congratulations. Questions from our friends in Pearl?
No question, but I just want to thank you so much for showing us. That's so very wonderful.
If I could just say that I had the opportunity to be with some of the members this year and we shared a dinner, and just to hear their enthusiasm. These are young people who join this program because they see the problems with our environment, and instead of getting bogged down and depressed about it, they get out there and do something about it. And, you know, who was on call for the dolphins? If they get that call, and some of them did get a call at 4:30 in the morning out there on winter, you know, very hazardous conditions, and not ones you want to go out to in the dark out here in the winter. And they're just really an amazing group of kids, and it was wonderful to hear them talk about their future plans and job applications, and it was all in the environmental agencies that we are hoping that will survive. So anyway, they were really very inspiring, and it's a great group of kids, and I think we're very lucky.
Commissioner Bertram.
Yeah, you know, talk about it's 3.5 years. I think so 3 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, so long, we didn't know that we'd get the next year.
Right.
And we can't forget that this came through. I mean, who that guy was with the chainsaw that was just federal cuts and stuff like that. And he didn't get his way with the American Republic. And then he's gone, and hopefully new administration will look kindly on this, and the program will continue. But I just want to mention that it was a really dangerous outfit.
Yeah, did a great job. I don't know if you beat the first one, you need G help, correct?
I can give a tiny bit of insight on that. I think all of the commissions and all of the AmeriCorps programs have been working really hard to do outreach, and I think across the aisle, and I think there's a lot of support across the aisle for AmeriCorps that always has been. But
The appropriators in the Congress.
Yes.
Some of the bipartisan, it's a bipartisan. Right, and it came together. They heard from it. Communities like ours, we all spoke up, and it's great. I think I'm gonna end on this note, just to thank you.
Thank you.
Right, our next item on the agenda is, an update from
Brian.
Brian Baumgartel on the, ripple effect award recipients. Please explain what a ripple effect award is. Who the recipients are. You might want to also explain what we're doing in terms of the water week.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Hold low for this. I'm gonna put my piece of paper up here. So I'm Brian Baumgartel. I am the director of Barnstable County's Clean Water Center. And just to give you a sense of what that organization does within the county, we provide a set of services which are mostly associated with wastewater treatment and more specifically on on-site systems and on-site technologies. There are 3 programs that we host, the Massachusetts Alternative Septic System Technology Center, which is concerned with technology development for advanced wastewater treatment technologies in the on-site realm. We have a program called Aquafund, which is to provide low-interest loans to homeowners to pay for their failed and failing septic system replacements. That program has gone well over $70 million in the last several years. And we're in the process of borrowing more money for that. So it provides a very important fallback for homeowners as they're looking to pay for their piece of all of our wastewater investments. The third program is our septic utility program, which is concerned with helping provide a set of services for homeowners to maintain their advanced treatment technologies where they may be required to use them. At some point, I'd love to come and give a presentation about all of those programs in detail, but I want to kind of stick to what I came here to talk about today, which is the Ripple Effect Award and also Cape Cod Clean Water Week. So this is our first inaugural effort at putting this together. And for a long time, I thought it was really important for our region to have some sort of a week for all of us to rally around within the clean water sector. So the basic concept of Clean Water Week is that it's not just about Barnstable County, which is why we're calling it Cape Cod Clean Water Week. It's really about all of the organizations that are doing tremendous work here on Cape Cod to ensure that our water resources are well protected. And we're talking about all of our water resources, whether that's groundwater or surface water or estuaries or ponds, et cetera. There are, across Cape Cod, there will be, during the course of this week, which is September 13th through the 19th, there are a number of organizations that will be hosting. We have about 17 events set up right now with those organizations, and it's everything from a documentary screening from OLOG, which is the Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage. That's a fantastic group, and they'll be doing their screening during our week. There are nature walks, there are bird walks, there are a lot of the conservation organizations on Cape Cod putting together their own little events. So the hope of this is that everybody would sort of participate in this. For our part, as Barnstable County and the Clean Water Center, we'll be holding 2 events. 2 primary events. One of them will be the formal presentation of the Ripple Effect Awards, which will be on September 18th, 2026 from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Clean Water Center, which I know is very far away from most of the folks in this room. I just did that drive myself and it took me over an hour and a half. So we will be streaming that and making it available for anybody who might want to watch that. And we will also be hosting on Saturday, the 19th, something we're internally calling Wastewater Palooza. But the basic concept is to bring everybody to the test center, provide an open house, sort of, I don't want to say carnival atmosphere, but a little bit of a festival type atmosphere. We have a touch a truck for the kids to come and look at excavators and digging machines and dump trucks and stuff. We'll have a set of microscopes set up so people can actually see what's in water, and they'll be able to, we'll have the kids get to draw pictures of those things. We have several technology vendors of on-site wastewater treatment technologies who will be there to talk about their various technologies amongst some other participating organizations, pond organizations who will also be there to provide information on those things. So just kind of a relaxed atmosphere for people to come. That'll be on September 19th from 10 to 2. And it will be staffed by staff from the Clean Water Center. But now to get to the Ripple Effect Award. So, we couldn't have a Clean Water Week without some sort of award to recognize the people who really, in our region, who have really done something to drive forward the conversation on clean water issues. And we put out a call about 2 months ago for nominations. We received 23 total nominations for 11 people. There were several who received many nominations. And what we were looking for is people who really have a demonstrated sustained leadership commitment and tangible impact in protecting and improving our water quality across Cape Cod. We put together a little Clean Water Center staff panel, and we came up with, of course, we're a bunch of scientists, so we created a matrix and scored all of the nominations. We came up with 3 nominees that we'd like to present to you for approval for our first inaugural Ripple Effect Award winners. This was an incredibly difficult choice for us. We know many of the people, and there were some new ones on there that we aren't familiar with their work. So it was great to get to see some different perspectives from other people who work on this stuff. But it was incredibly hard for us to choose. And ultimately, it came down to the numbers, like the scientists we are. So I'd like to announce the slate of winners and just give you a brief overview of some of their work. And then move on from there. So our first winner on the slate is Dennis LeBlanc. He is a retired USGS scientist emeritus from the New England Water Science Center. If you don't know Dennis, he is an amazing human being. He has worked tirelessly for Cape Cod through USGS to bring to the fore a lot of the water quality issues that we've faced here, and is in a lot of ways one of the people who is very responsible for bringing some of the bigger issues to our attention. His groundbreaking work identifying groundwater contamination at the former Massachusetts Military Reservation, now known as Joint Base Cape Cod, sparked decades of investigation, remediation, and improvements to cleanup efforts both locally and nationally. His innovative groundwater models, sampling techniques, and technical expertise have made environmental research and remediation more effective while helping protect Cape Cod's sole source aquifer. His technical review also helped prevent a treatment design that could have significantly lowered nearby ponds and rivers. Beyond his scientific contributions, Mr. LeBlanc has shared his expertise through mentoring, technical committees, field trips, which I've actually participated in, and I've seen many of college students coming down and learning from him. Demonstrations and public presentations, making complex groundwater science accessible to communities and inspiring the next generation of environmental professionals. Our next nominee is Rick Bishop. He is the Executive Director of the Friends of Bass River. He's demonstrated exceptional leadership in advancing ecological restoration throughout the Bass River watershed. He successfully led multiple restoration projects, secured millions of dollars in funding, built strong partnerships among municipalities and agencies, and engaged the community through education and outreach. He has consistently turned environmental vision into measurable results. Most notably, he secured more than $10 million to restore over 57 acres of former cranberry bogs to thriving natural wetlands. He's also helped build an 1,800-member grassroots organization that actively engages residents in protecting local water resources. His work spans tidal restorations, fish passage, wetlands, stormwater treatments, shellfish projects, and environmental monitoring using public forums, tours, newsletters, and volunteer programs. And our third nominee for this is Dr. Kimberly Crocker Pearson. She is currently on the Natural Resources and Conservation and Health Boards in the town of Brewster. Her background is in medicine. However, she expanded through her various board participation into many other areas of expertise, scientific, medical, and policy wise. She's made a meaningful impact on pond protection and environmental advocacy in Brewster. played a huge role in developing the town's first coordinated ponds management plan, strengthening the reliability and public accessibility of more than 20 years of monitoring data and identifying regulatory improvements for pond protection. Through her leadership on the Natural Resources, Conservation, and Health Boards, she has translated scientific data into practical policy and helped align town committees around cohesive, science-based bylaws. So that is our slate of three suggested winners, who I hope I have effectively sold to you for our ripple effect nominees. As I said, we received very many tremendous nominations, and it was incredibly hard for us to choose for this inaugural round. And my hope is that now that more folks know that we're doing this, that next year's nomination round will be even more difficult for us to choose from. So with that, I will stop there.
Excellent choices.
Commissioner Bergstrom.
Yeah, for a long time, I was a member of Friends of Chatham Valley. I mean, there's many groups like that, wonderful team. Where it's Pond Coalition, other little organizations that, volunteers to help check out the, if they do flood studies, if you, the sucky dish, they see how that is with turbidity and it's so important that those people realize that their work is valuable. And ultimately, it's going to affect the decision making of the people like you. What you're doing with this gallery is very valuable. There's people in it, makes them know their work is valuable, and it creates a team, that extended throughout the Cape, people that you can't. I worry that, fishermen, they even go freshwater. Keep up the good work.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I would like to move to endorse the Ripple Effect Award recipients as presented and well chosen.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, please in favor say
Aye.
those that carries unanimously. Thank you. Don't go away. Don't go away.
People who.
I think I would like to just reaffirm the interest in coming back out to Truro, talking about the work that is going on at our Clean Water Center. The work that Ryan and his team they're doing there at the center is incredibly important. So that as we look at IA systems, at innovative technologies, with REST power, wastewater problem, they're doing some great work in this area, testing a variety of different technologies. And if you're in that neighborhood, I would encourage you to make a call to Brian and please get a tour of the Clean Water Center if you have the opportunity to do so. But I do think it really is important for us to come back out here to kind of drill down a little bit deeper in terms of exactly what we're doing and how these services can be helpful to you here in Truro. Town staff are looking at utilizing in their communities these IA systems. There's a testing requirement. So for you to meet your TMDL requirements, these systems have to work. And if they don't work, if they don't function properly, then in many cases, this falls back on the municipality. So I think to some degree, having the ability at a center like this to assist homeowners, communities address the value and efficiency of these systems, because they're complicated. Some of these innovative wastewater systems are energy intensive. They require regular testing. And oftentimes the homeowner is just sort of basically in over their head in terms of the responsibility and dealing with that. And this is the challenge that Ryan and his team are working on, is developing a program to provide that assistance to homeowners. They're creating awareness to municipal officials to know exactly how these systems work, what's going on, where the technology is headed. Ryan was incredibly successful in getting a grant from the Gates Foundation to develop some real breaking technology that hopefully can be deployed around the world. So we could very well be not only focused on solving Cape Cod's wastewater problems, but we also may be playing a role in solving problems in the developing countries and other areas around the world. So the kind of capability, the talent at our center is just remarkable. And obviously, as we learn more and we end up talking about other types of pollutants, other types of challenges. PFAS has come up as a regular topic of discussion. And lately, Brian has been hosting the commissioners of DEP, Fish and Game. We're getting more and more state officials coming out to the center to understand their capabilities so that when we look for more dollars and more resources to expand their programs and some of the work that they're doing, we'll have a lot of support from key agencies that come on. So I think it makes a great deal of sense for us to come back out here soon to Brian and to do, and maybe it's something that we might want to do at a select board agenda.
I was just gonna say, I'd love to take it a step further and invite Brian, you and your team to an upcoming meeting coordinated with our town manager and staff. I'd love to hear more about the work you're doing. Of course, the commissioners are invited as well.
No, some of us will be.
If we want to make it happen quickly, we absolutely would love it.
Yeah, we'd love to. Thank you so much.
And I would just like to add that the IA systems or NIA systems or whatever we're going to be calling them in the next 2 weeks, they're showing great improvement, and they really will be. We're looking at. It would be great to think that we wouldn't have to sewer everything. That this could be a very effective tool, and it's getting there. Each generation of these coming out are getting better and better. I just had a report on this last night in Wellfleet, so it's great to have the center there to confirm these things and to educate people on not only the topic, but the people who are going to be installing them and being experts. So with that, I know we're running out of time. I'm going to keep it short there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian, for everything.
Let's move it. And I understand, I know we were a little bit pressed for time. People have other things. If you won't offend us, if you have to, someone has to leave, has to leave the meeting or something. I want to get our lab up and get see Dan White, Dan and Jay. Let's get our health department up here. We want to at least create better awareness of what we're doing with our laboratory. Because it's an important resource, it's great capability there. As Commissioner Bergstrom mentioned, that when we received ARPA funds, we used some of those dollars, but a good chunk of that money went into upgrading the capabilities of the lab. So you need to know exactly what we're doing there and how it can be helpful to both the town and residents here to run some of this.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Commissioners, Select Board, Town Manager, Jay Gardner. I'm the Director of Health and Environment. I'm joined by Deputy Director, Megan Kolstad, Dan White, and Dan has he's the Director of the lab. He has a short presentation that he's going to walk you through, just talking about an incredible amenity that's often hidden in plain view, but it is no less important. So if I could just give you a little bit before Dan goes into the intricacies of the lab. It's often behind the scenes, but the lab is the guardian really of an essential, resource for Cape Cod. For decades, the lab has provided trusted scientific testing and analysis, municipalities, public water suppliers, the private well owners, environmental programs across the region. It encompasses drinking water testing, groundwater, surface water, bathing beaches, swimming pools and spas, shellfish areas, ponds. It's helping communities identify contamination, meet state and federal standards, right? And most importantly, what the commissioners did, we expanded this to also include PFAS. And I'm going to touch upon that in a little bit. The lab has scaled tremendously over the past several years. 20,000 samples. Over 38,000 tests are run. And it's only because the economic and the financial resources that have been put in towards the lab. This amenity is essential for business owners and the economic growth. Not just enough to have this. What is the impact that is delivering in real dollars? The importance extends far beyond the cost of testing water, right? The reliable water is a foundational to the Cape's economy, supporting tourism and hospitality, fisheries, recreation, real estate transfers. Communities depend upon them. In context, the laboratory represents an economic investment in prevention. Every sample tested, a potential contamination problem identified, helps to early identify and reassure that the assets on the Cape are desirable for residents, business owners, and the millions of visitors that attend Cape Cod. By safeguarding drinking water, beaches, ponds, groundwater, and other resources, the laboratory helps preserve not only public health and the environment, which is what we're really designed for, it's the economic piece. Municipal property values, municipal taxes, economic employment, local real estate, the long-term economic viability of Cape Cod. One of the things you hear in business and in government is they talk about priorities. And then there's a saying in business that show me your budget and I'll tell you your priorities. These commissioners, and for some time now, whether it's the ARPA funds or their operating budget, have made a tremendous investment in the lab. And that return is significant. What is that? The dividends that have paid for that is for the municipalities. And Truro has been a beneficiary for that. The beach sampling program that's happened, the courier that happens so that individuals and residents don't have to bring their samples down 45 minutes or an hour away into Barnstable County into the complex. A courier is hired. They put a system in place to make sure that it is available, it's convenient, it's customer friendly. The residents out here in Truro are as much our customers as they are in Barnstable and Hyannis and the neighboring communities. We understand that, we value that, and that's important. That making sure that the commissioners make sure that you understand the importance and their budget reflects that. The other piece I did want the town manager to understand in your punch list that you talked about, your last one was really the social determinants of health, right? You want to talk about food and access to health care and transportation and all those other social determinants. Really, it's the quality of life that you all deal with every day. At the Harwich meeting, the commissioners introduced their new epidemiologist, Cassidy O'Hara, who is really mining data. The commissioners have already identified, we want to get some information on cancer incidents on Cape Cod. And there's a whole host of things that they're working on. I took note of that, and Cassidy is going to be in touch with whether it's your health department or your staff or your office directly. We can give you information, data-driven decision-making, whether it's in grants that you're going to be doing or setting priorities. That's important. But now for the first time, the county has an on-staff epidemiologist that will be getting information specific to Cape Cod, and then in comparison to what does that look like across the state. So I want you to know that you'll be hearing from us from that. I want to turn it over to Dan White, the lab director.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan White, Laboratory Director for the Barnstable County Water Quality Laboratory, division of the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment. We are a state certified, state-of-the-art water quality laboratory. There's currently 14 employees, some part-time, some full-time, dedicated professionals. All definitely have to give a shout out to our staff. They're wonderful team. For services that we offer, currently, probably the most front-facing is the beach sampling, beach monitoring program, and I'll go a little bit more into depth in that in a moment. Also, we do private well testing for residents around the Cape. Many residents on the Cape, as you know, are on the private drinking wells, and we encourage them to all test for the most common contaminants you might see to protect health. We also do a lot of testing for the public water supplies around the Cape, both the community-based water departments and the non-community public water suppliers, such as campgrounds, hotels, and those that might rely on drinking. We do a lot of wastewater analysis. We support Brian's programs with the Massachusetts Alternate Septic System Test Center. We do all the wastewater testing for them and also for some other monitoring efforts around the Cape. County runs a landfill monitoring program looking at wells, monitoring wells for the landfills around the Cape. We do all their chemistry testing for them, and what we don't do in-house, we sell out. And since 2022, we've been testing pond water around the Cape for cyanotoxin. There's a request from some of the health agents around the Cape to actually look for the toxins that could be present from cyanobacteria blooms. And we do sample testing as well. Our clients are local residents, number one, businesses on the Cape, the Mass Test Centers, as I was saying, public water suppliers. We work with government agencies, both municipal, state, and federal, and various nonprofit organizations. I'm going to go a little bit into some of those services, just a few as a sample. If I talk about all of them, we'll be here all day. Probably the most front-facing and noticeable program we have is the beach monitoring program. So all of the towns are, all the town health departments are required to monitor bathing beaches for water quality for bacteria. Enterococci bacteria for the saltwater rain beaches and E. coli for the freshwater beaches. The county provides a service to go out and collect samples and test them in our laboratory. How about the local health agents with that? It's partially funded by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and a grant from them. We have a beach coordinator who leads a team of 6 seasonal beach samplers. And over the course of the summer, from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we sample over 350 marine and freshwater beaches weekly. So far this summer, they've collected 5,000 samples and analyzed it. Well, they've analyzed 5,000 samples. There are one town that collects their own samples, Sandwich, and we do the analysis for them. Borough, Jenny McMillan, the beach coordinator, was raving to me today about how well they work with the Truro Health Department. Now, hopefully, Truro often goes out and collects some of their own samples as well. I also wanted to highlight a new feature that the beach samplers and Jenny teamed up together to build this year. It's an interactive map that's on our website. So if you go to the county's website, you can find this map with all the beaches they sample around the Cape. And just by clicking on each of those green dots, you'll get the name of the beach, the last time it was sampled, what the current results are. So very nice little feature. There's also a state map the Department of Public Health has that covers the entire state. And that is information they get from us for the Cape. We upload to them daily. So that map is regularly updated as well. It's a nice resource. Private well testing. So we offer 2 basic kits for well owners to test. The routine well test kit tests for bacteria, contaminants like nitrate, and secondary contaminants, things that affect aesthetic quality like iron and manganese we see around here a lot, sodium, plus a couple of the physical parameters, pH and conductance, which can give us clues if there's other problems going on in your water. And I recommend that any well owner tests with this regularly, if not every year, every few years. Some of the contaminants like total coliform nitrate, you won't know they're there, but they could still be harmful. The other test kit we offer is what we call the real estate kit, because it's often required for real estate transfers. It's the routine kit plus vials for volatile organic compounds analysis, which are man-made and naturally occurring organic compounds that can travel through well water. They're volatile, so they dissolve easily in the pores of the well water, groundwater, and travel through it. They include things like industrial solvents, gasoline byproducts. Chloroform is probably the most common one we see around here in trace amounts. That's just a product of seawater. It's because we're close to the ocean. We run a courier service for these well kits to help residents, as Jay was saying, get them to our lab. So every Tuesday and Thursday, a courier goes up and stops at the town halls for Brewster, Eastham, and Wellfleet, and then brings the samples back to our lab. And then on Wednesdays, the courier will go to Falmouth and Mashpee and bring them back. It's been a really successful service that we've offered for many years now.
So if I'm a Truro resident, do I enter the Wellfleet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wellfleet.
And where?
By 9:30 in the morning at the town hall.
And the kits?
Just to clarify, it's the DPW.
Yes.
Oh, the DPW.
Yeah, it is the DPW building, and you can pick up the kits there as well.
Yes, up the kits. If there's other specialty needs for testing residents have, sometimes we send the bottles to the Wellfleet and they can pick up from there.
Is it charged?
Yes.
For Truro, you can pick up the bottles of the club.
And so the kids at the health department.
Yeah, so you pick them up here. And you drop them to them.
Yeah, there is a charge. The routine well kit is $70 for the analysis, and the real estate is $190 for the analysis. So check or money order with the kit. Or you can always pick up kits and bottles at our laboratory in Barnstable. We're just to the right of the old jail building. We're open 8 to 4:30 every day. Samples can be dropped off there as well.
What's the turnaround time?
Turnaround time is 10 business days for the routine kits. If PFAS is needed, that we have running about 15-day turnaround time. So the county contracted with outside company Tetra Tech to offer free well testing throughout the county based on for private wells using ARPA funds. We at the lab are doing all the testing for that. So far, we've received 340 kits out of a total of 375 that were bookmarked to be paid for. And these are getting the real estate kits, so the routine parameters, volatile organic compounds, but also PFAS, the fluoridated alkyl substances that are the forever chemicals, which has become such an issue out there in the county. We got certified to analyze PFAS in 2025, thanks to an instrument provided by the commissioners, the funding for it. And so we're well on the way to being completed. We're hoping to finish all the analysis up in September, and then a report will be written by Tetra Tech, and we'll be presenting to you these results when we have them. And the last thing I wanted to point out was something we don't talk about much is our seasonal employees. Speaking about the beach program, we have 6 beach samplers, but we also hire 3 lab assistants for the summer because we're extremely busy. And the department has 3 public health assistants as well. It's a great opportunity to launch young people into careers in the sciences, especially environmental. And it's also, for us personally, a great recruiting tool. Many of our staff members, chemists, started off as seasonal lab assistants. And then they graduate, the position opens up, and we already know who they are. We know who we are, and they're familiar with our processes. Just this summer, we had a chemist position open up, and Maggie, who's in the back there, is going to be our full-time chemist, permanent chemist, starting on Monday. Very exciting for them. So I'll be open for any other questions.
Go to Nancy and.
I do not have any, my colleagues. Well, thank you.
You're welcome, everybody.
Commissioner Bergstrom?
Yeah, I just want to say that, we obviously attend a lot of meetings where water is, we talked about PFAS, we talked about some bacteria, and, not everybody is a hydrologist or engineer. And they hear these names, they say, well, which is my water? And then they try to relate it to health issues, they say, exposure to certain chemicals and those problems. Barnstable County Labs was probably the premier research people get confidence in their data. I don't know if there's anything like it anywhere, but I know. We can say, you can bring your water there and they tell you what's in it, give you confidence that the water you're drinking is safe. So that's really valuable, it's probably underutilized right now. More people don't to get their water tasted, so that they can have it. It's a very difficult to touch on that. When someone calls you and says, what's in my water? That's a difficult question to answer. Because, if you look at a public water supplier, the town water departments, they're required by the state under the Clean Water Drinking Act to test for hundreds of different compounds. We test for total coliform on their various sites monthly. We handle a lot of those for them. But just a normal well owner can't afford to test that much. So that's why we try and narrow it down with the routine well tests. These are the most common contaminants. And if we find problems, then we can look at additional testing and what makes it. We don't test everything in our lab, but we work with a network of labs around New England, and we can get most anything tested from them.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Would you like to ask Dan a question?
Yes, I would.
Go right ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go right ahead.
To the last speaker, the data that your office has collected, is that, I'd be interested in what trends you're seeing and maybe what those trends point towards our overall concern about the health of our underground drinking water supplies. Can you give me a source where I can view those trends?
So we're working on that right now. That's part of that Tetra Tech free drinking water program, is that data is going to be analyzed by them. And they will be putting together a report talking about trends throughout the Cape for those contaminants. We just changed our computer system about 3 years ago to a new computer system that for our data, and that allows more data mining. So I'm working and I'm hoping to work a little more with the epidemiologists to make that data available. Because there's wonderful data there. It's just in a form that's hard to get to. It's not just an Excel sheet. It's in these computer archives. So getting it out and getting it in a presentable form is a challenge right now. We don't have it available right now, but we're hoping with this report, we're coming out to have the first step in that.
One of the reasons, let me just say, one of the reasons why we put funding into this Tetra Tech broad-based sampling program is so that we can get a much better picture of like what's happening in terms of water quality, particularly with wells around the Cape. So this is information. We have talked about this quite a bit, and we've been very interested in getting a much better picture, a clearer picture. But your own municipalities, they're testing at least their public water supplies on a regular basis. And a lot of that information is reported publicly and is available through, NV10.
So
that.
thank you. One follow-up, if I could.
Right.
So out of the total population of private wells in a particular town, let's take Trump. What percentage of that population do you think you need to consider an accurate determination as to the health of the town's underground drinking water sources as a whole?
So that's a very difficult question because your quality of your water can vary a lot from just a small area, depending on depth of well, time of the year. variables. So it's not just about the number of wells over an area, it's also the depth of the wells over time. I don't have a good answer for the question. It's something that probably needs more addressing. We have a lot of data. I don't have data on welding. Data of where samples are collected, what the results were. Again, I can tell you from some of the stuff I've been seeing, one of the nice things is PFOS has been very few hits over the state maximum contaminant. I can tell you that now. So it's a little bit rosier a picture than we were fearing. But the actual interpretation of that is still needs work done. Someone who's understands the hydrology, someone who's understands the epistemology a little bit better, and getting that data into a form that is, viewable and accessible.
Don't be overworking. There's one question in the back there. Go ahead.
I just wondered if you have access to, or if you know of any place that has baseline studies that have been done in nonprofits or, baseline studies done with water quality of particular counties and particular platforms.
So there had been some work done in the past by USGS. How much it goes into specific things, I don't know.
But that would be a place that can start to look at things that you do.
Recommend starting with USGS.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I would.
Okay, yes, sir.
One clarification, someone asked about figuring out a Stanford model in Gulf Lake. Our
Yeah.
health department, we moved to the Gestalt Center by the South Gulf Lake, some security, and we figured out data center. Thank you.
Very
And
good.
I just want to add to the last question that, for a long history of, being here, 65 years, the National Seashore did collect tremendous amounts of data, on all of the towns that it incorporates. And, I'm sure some of that's dropped off because of funding and, it's going to let them fade away. However, it's there and it would take a look and even talk to some people there. They'd be more than happy to. Okay, thank you.
Very good.
All right. Number 10.
Yes.
One step. Specific point, I think that's.
So, yeah, that's really outside the scope of our laboratory. We're only set up to do whatever, not like clinical testing, but.
Consider procurement.
Well, we would need to change our setup quite a bit. I think there's probably other labs more medical based that are more suitable for.
Thank you.
Yeah, I noticed, the PFAS test is $1 for the request.
For blood work.
So there has been increase. I noticed about lowering that cost, perhaps through a procurement.
We just want to read your question. Those folks alone.
People talking. Okay, go ahead.
If I could, County Administrator, Michael Dutton, about a year ago, led a negotiation with Quest to be able to downwardly adjust what you talked about for blood work. And there is an arrangement, if you say you're from Cape Cod, and I can get you that link to reduce the financial burden there. And it is significant, but Quest and Michael was able to negotiate a downward adjustment.
So if anybody that's interested, they just need to give you.
They can get us all the way,
Contact information.
we can get you booked for the blood testing.
So they negotiated the discount.
So,
Let's
Yep.
Thank you, Ken. All right, we're gonna move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 6E, discussion on the Cape's carrying capacity in the regional water supply in the Thanet lens. We're putting this on because this is the whole topic of carrying capacity has been coming up in virtually every community that we have been visiting. Similar concerns about growth and development, about particularly big development projects coming in, and the challenges that communities are facing in terms of providing adequate supply. Our last discussion with the town of Falmouth, getting briefed on the drought conditions that they're experiencing. One circular public drinking water comes from surface water supply, and the levels are dropping significantly, and they have problems. And so, at the last meeting, they briefed us on the situation and how they're dealing with it. And that select board is going to be meeting soon, I think it's next week. And they'll be having a public discussion on approaches and strategies in terms of dealing with it. But on the table, I found it is a fairly open discussion about finding ways to limit development or providing more scrutiny of certain projects. And I would say that among the select board members that we spoke with, there's some real frustration over what they're wrestling with and some of the pressures, particularly in terms of development. So we have been interested in hearing different perspectives on this. We were asked to do this, quite frankly, by the select board in Harwich. Select board in Harwich. Now, in each community, there's a different set of issues and concerns, and Harwich is a little bit different. They've been concerned, they've been interested, quite frankly, and very openly critical of the 40B projects and the review process for those developments, and expressing interest in seeing much greater scrutiny, at the county level, because of the role of the Cape Cod Commission. The way the commission law was constructed was the commission's role in reviewing the 40B budget needs to direct those comments to the zoning board of appeals. But there's been some open question about how strong the recommendations can be, how many limitations they can provide, or how much mitigation is in the system, and what are the thresholds that might trigger greater scrutiny. So the Harwich Select Board wanted us to, and I think it's a legitimate question. They wanted us to sort of facilitate this discussion in carrying capacity. They have a particular interest in seeing the county take on a more active role in scrutinizing 40B projects. Now, the Martha's Vineyard Commission, they have been doing that for years. When that commission act was written, the Martha's Vineyard Commission had the authority, or at least it was interpreted that they had the authority, but now it's being challenged in courts. So we're very concerned about what's happening over there. We've had discussions with the commission to find out to what degree litigation there could undermine or weaken the Cape Cod Commission Act. So we've had a lot of discussion, a lot of interaction, but that's sort of just one piece of a larger conversation about carrying capacity. I can recall the last time the topic of carrying capacity had this kind of interest around the Cape was when Paul Tsongas, former Senator Paul Tsongas, in 1988, he did a report for then Governor Weld, I believe. And in his report, he made a recommendation that there should be a building moratorium on Cape Cod for 2 years until we can figure out the carrying capacity of development on Cape Cod. And as soon as he made that announcement, it unleashed a firestorm. But it also led to a lot of discussion, led to a lot of debate. And I think to some degree, while it led to the creation and the support for creating the Cape Cod Commission, there's a question out there: to what degree do we really answer those questions? And I think that's what people are asking us today. To what degree? It's great that we create the Cape Cod Commission. There's a regional policy plan. There's all this work that's been going on. We've worked aggressively to mitigate some of the damage where, in cases there, carrying capacity has been exceeded. And I think if you live in, on the water in Osterville, on the water in some communities, you could easily say that carrying capacity has been exceeded. The ability of the natural environment, Mother Nature, to absorb waste and treat waste and deal with it has been exceeded. Steps need to be taken. So in many communities, we're already taking steps to find ways to mitigate those. But it does this is a question that keeps coming up. So I think rather than you hearing us lecture this topic, I think what we're trying to do is open the conversation to hear from from this community's perspective, how you think we should treat this question. Should we? How would you like to see us address it? How would you like us to focus on? What are the aspects of it? In some communities, water supply is the predominant issue. Water supply and water quality. And so we heard that loud and clear.
Right.
Or I don't want this conversation to be unduly restrained by any boundaries that I put on this. I want this to be a wider conversation with the board and the Truro officials in terms of how you think this conversation could unfold. Go right ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, first of all, thank you for the open discussion.
Yeah.
You've heard a little bit today how passionate our community is about preserving the water supply, preserving the environment. You've heard that same passion around the desperate need for housing that people live in, and many people live in, more people live in. We believe when we look at the Walsh development, because that's really a big part of what we're talking about here. We believe that we can do both. We can build housing, and we're not talking about 300 units. We're not talking about a Walmart. So let me just dispel that narrative right now. That has never been discussed by this board. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about housing, and we're talking about different kinds of housing. We're talking about perhaps doing, we're talking about owning housing. We're talking about maybe build your own. We're talking about the rental mix. We're talking about all of that right now. We just appointed the third iteration of a committee by town residents to talk about what that Walsh property, what it will look like in terms of housing, in terms of recreation, in terms of open space, and in terms of, and I forgot one thing, but I'll figure it. So we believe we can do both, and we have seen the science, which is why we asked our scientists to be here today, has shown us that we can do both. That's why we're talking about the multi-straw approaches to water. That's why we're talking about potential well sites in South Truro. That's why we're talking about recharge. That's why we're talking about trying to partner with the National Seashore about a land swap. We are exploring many, many options to help us do both. We're exploring advanced IA systems. So I want to dispel any realistic concern that we're not looking at all that, because of course we are looking at all that. So we welcome the opportunity for this discussion. That's really what I wanted to get out there, is that we hear what's circulating out there. A lot of it isn't true. I just told you what's true, and I'm telling our community what is true and fact-based. And if people have technical questions, we'll answer them to the best of our ability, and anything we can't answer, we invited our water consultant to answer on our behalf. This is why we had the water forum that we had. We've had two, actually. One forum with town boards and committees that were involved in the planning and execution of the Walsh property. And then we had a public forum where we invited all of our consultants to come and talk about the Walsh property, the well at Walsh property, potential wells at Walsh property, and water treatment at the Walsh property. It was a public meeting, everybody was invited. So we share all of the same concerns, and it's top of mind in every step that we take.
Thank you, Commissioner Burston.
Yeah. I sense the frustration. The brief project, and I've been involved in council projects way back 25 years ago. We just have to accept the fact that despite what you hear from some members of the public, there are people out there who just do not have another person. That's different. When you come up with something, it can throw everything against the wall, seriously. And yes, you can give them the information, but they have to want the answers. And sometimes they just want to put something else in place. So I understand the frustration in trying to get these projects through. We followed the last series of town meetings in the spring. Some good projects were turned down, some were accepted. And, you know, what we have to do is we have to instill confidence in the public that, as you said, every I is done, the T is crossed, we know exactly what the effects are environment, we know exactly what density we provide, we know exactly how we deal with traffic issues and stuff. The Cape Cod Commission will be a tremendous resource. But, you know, it's going to be a struggle because and struggling with the chat, the chat resident of the thing. So all I can say is that you're doing the right thing, coming up with all the answers. So it's going to be easy. And some projects may, you know, town meeting may say, no, we don't want it. You know, it's a choice. What are you going to do? But I think that we shouldn't get frustrated because people keep asking the same questions and not getting the answers they want, because that's going to happen. If at the end of the day, they do not want more people living in your town, then you know, you're never going to satisfy them. Sorry about that.
I just like to, I don't think that's all correct. I think that, not everybody who opposes housing or questions the development is because they don't want anybody else in the same. I don't think that's true. There's a reality that we are facing as a region, that this is a fragile, unique, and precious peninsula that we have been given the job of stewardship of. And we have benefited from that because the environment is the economy. That has been the mantra of protecting of looking at wastewater. That was how that was presented. If we don't take care of the water, your house's values will go down. It's not to encourage more development. And it's not to, and actually we've had too much development. As I said earlier, we're loving it to death. I am guilty. I bought a house here. I loved it. And then I moved here year round. And, you know, when we did that was one of the, I was really questioning, did we do the right thing? Because this was the refuge. This was the place where we went and recharged. We were able to restore ourselves by the nature, through the diversity of the animals. It's not just about humans. There's other species that we share this with, and we have a responsibility to them and to the ocean animals. So it's not just about not wanting somebody in your neighbor, in your home or in your town. That has been welcomed to the point of we are in a tipping point. And, you know, Falmouth, we came and they came to us because they were very concerned about what they were learning through they had their water tested and surveyed by USGS. It confirmed what they were seeing. Their board of selectmen, Mr. Brown, got up and said, you know, I used to think that we had plenty of water and that there's not going to be a problem here. And this is kind of like, you know, Chicken Little here, but he sees it himself. He's on a pond and it's going down. People in Wellfleet have seen the ponds go down just this summer. We are in a drought. We might have these rains, but the rains do, by the time the rain gets into the system, the people that are here have already absorbed that. So it's not really helping. There's a lot of, we've overbuilt even the seasonal homes. We can feel that in the summer. We're feeling that crush. And all those homes that have been built are occupied during that season. As I said, if everybody decided to come and live in their second home, this is what we would have. What we have right now, it would be all day, every day, 365 days a year. And we don't have the services out here. We want to make this a year-round community, and we don't have all of the resources that we're bringing. And we're the most expensive place to be. And the most expensive, we're in Wellfleet, it's 15 miles to either supermarket. So there's a lot of reality that you can brush off by saying it's NIMBY or it's people who don't want other people here. It's bad planning. Everybody was happy to get the second homeowner tax base. We didn't have to really build, you know, the infrastructure to support them. Now people are coming here, COVID allowed people and technology, now people can work from their home here. And their job is in California, but they decided to stay. So we're facing a reality we created ourselves. And we need to be able to say, to a certain point, you can come, you can visit, you can enjoy, but not everyone can stay. And that's to me, the real issue. It's not an easy issue. And it's gonna be a tough thing.
Let me just, I'll get to you just one second to hear it. One of the reasons why we put this on the agenda was to hear what others have to say. We could spend a lot of time talking amongst ourselves, and I'm fine with that, but we're here in Truro for a reason. We want to hear from Truro folks. So I'll give you 20 seconds, Commissioner, just be brief so we can spend the remainder of our time to hear from Truro.
I agree, that's a good policy. Anyway, what I'm saying is that, Commissioner Lance is right. It is a decision. Should we do this or not? Do the benefits outweigh the costs? What I really object to is people come along and say, yes, I'm for this project. Yes, I'm for affordable housing, but, and then they throw all sorts of stuff at you. Well, the road cut is bad, you're too close to some. So in reality, throwing technical obstacles at housing, we should just stop and say, this isn't right for you, instead of trying to, force you to go through. In many cases, claiming that information is not available, or it's not a thing, or all that kind of thing that they go. I guess too much of that. You look at a project, not familiar with your project, first thing you ask for, it's just benefit the town. Do we want to do this? And then you can overcome the technical needs one by one.
Thank you. I want to hear from Truro residents. Yes.
I'm sorry, I was raising my hand in disbelief, not so much.
Okay.
But I will.
Okay. Okay, and then I see Scott's here. Maya, you want to speak?
All right.
Maya? Okay, great. We have to wait on you. Yes. Is it working?
Yes. It's really hard to talk about this issue because so many good people are trying to work on it from so many different angles. Mr. Bergstrom is correct that there may be some people who raise obstacles because they're throwing spaghetti and policy sticks. But one of the things that I can certainly attest to in this community is that many people who are trying to ask questions are persisting in asking those questions because the spaghetti doesn't even make it to the middle. Right? That they're simply not feeling that the information they're getting is either fully transparent or that it's contradictory. For example, water experts. Water experts on Truro have, at least 3 of them, have very different opinions about what is possible at that site and what is beneficial to the town and what is beneficial to Provincetown. It leaves residents and taxpayers with a very serious question. And they're legitimate questions. It doesn't, as I said earlier, I can personally attest to this. I am all for affordable and attainable housing at a scale that Truro can sustain environmentally, financially, fiscally, and that takes care of our residents. We absolutely should do that. But that said, what is not resolved, and in Truro, to me, is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Is the difference between what the citizens voted on in 2024 to limit housing at Walsh to 160, which this select board has terrifically said they want to honor and respect when the Walsh overlay zoning allows for hundreds and hundreds more units. And as long as that overlay zoning is intact, none of the administrative steps that we could take now with a well-intentioned board and town manager. Nobody questions that intentionality. It cannot be enforced long term. 2 years from now, the select board can decide on what the 400 units. So how do we get in Truro that resolved on a permanent basis? And this is my question to the commission, because that's an internal thing to Truro. But here's where the commission could really potentially help. One of the things that's strongly affecting our ability to make that decision in an enforceable way is that regulations are in the pipeline, some generated by folks connected to the county, to put zoning requirements in legislation in ways like S 3178, section 43 has a stealth amendment that puts zoning obligations on Massachusetts towns if it's passed in an economic development piece of legislation. Now, that's not something that, and there are other examples. Seasonal communities imposes them. There are many other things that are attached to taking money from federal and state sources. Where we need help, I believe, outside of Truro, to keep us not at each other's throats about a question that cannot be answered totally within our own power, is to get help in addressing that in another way. And that is where I appreciate the county taking this up and thinking about how it can help us come to peace. Truro needs to come to peace on housing. We need to develop it. We need to develop it in a scale we can sustain. And in my view, water has to be first. You don't have water, you don't have housing, you don't have jobs, you don't have people, you don't have anything. So that said, it's not so straightforward as wanting housing and a limit or a cap or not. It's how do we get there in a way that doesn't force us to adopt rules and regulations that take the deciding power out of the hands of our local authorities so that we can come to reasonable solutions and improvements.
I understand completely what you're saying, Kelly.
Yeah, you know what, that last phrase is exactly what I was thinking, because I don't want to take authority out of our legislative body here in Truro. I think it's really important that that you all think about, if you are planning to, or you're trying to think of ways to become more involved or create greater regulation or greater oversight over what individual towns are doing. I hope that you would not approach it from a one size fits all approach. Truro, we're weird out here. We like the way we do things out here. We want to continue to do things the way we like. We want to keep Truro weird. And so we want to make sure that you are not, that you wouldn't be trying to impose rules that benefit Barnstable or Falmouth, but wouldn't be appropriate for Truro. I also would just want to caution you all from opening a can of worms where we could where regulatory processes could be politicized or could be weaponized. I don't think anybody wants that. That's not the intention here. So, I say all that to kind of ask, I heard the word that we're at a tipping point. When it comes to water, we're having a conversation about carrying capacity. We brought our water resources expert, Scott Horsley, because I thought maybe you all had some data about that tipping point to present to us. So
No.
I was, okay. So
I love having Scott.
Yeah.
Any
yeah, I would just love to root the conversation as much as we can in science rather than in politics.
No, I appreciate it. Let me just, multiple people want to be recognized. Let me just acknowledge the point that you made, because the observation that you made is very consistent with some points that have been made by the Massachusetts Municipal Association. Right, that's the organization that lobbies on behalf of all municipalities, and one of the things that they've objected to are provisions being inserted in various bills that basically overrule or undermine home rule. And they're making the argument that there's some decisions you just have to leave to the towns. There'll be these very spirited debates, in some cases intense debates, but in many respects, you've got to allow the local communities to work that out themselves and respect that. I think that's what you're saying, right? Okay, I just want you to know that the Mass Municipal Association has written and lobbied very strongly on that point. The letters that they've written have been pretty intense. And we as a board have also weighed in support of the Mass Municipal Association's position. So we have weighed in support of their position. We don't want to see any poison pills or any pieces of legislation that basically alter and undermine the ability of local communities to chart their own future. One of the arguments that Mass Municipal has said is that by doing this, you're taking the decision-making away from the local voters. All right? It undermines democracy. All right? And that's something that needs to be respected. Here we are as a nation talking about respecting democracies around the world. Well, we need to focus on respecting democracies here in our own country and the work of our own local governments. So I just want you to say that you have allies out there that are speaking very intently and very strongly on that. Okay, so I want to get that across. Hang on one second. Again, we want to listen to Truro if you're going. All right, yeah, Sue.
Take that one step further and the other 300 pound gorilla in the room, Truro and Provincetown have, Provincetown has the right from the state law to draw water from Truro. Provincetown is water department and land in Truro, and they operate under an intermunicipal water agreement. As Kelly said, we do not want this to become politicized with the county. The Walsh property, just a very quick overview, 69 acres, was approved it for housing, open space, recreation, and the housing is only to go on 29 acres. Anyway, Provincetown is now in a position where they are pressuring us to put a well right where the housing is the best. Okay, so we don't need to get into that, but this is a complicating factor. And we do not, we in Truro want to be able to, as Nancy said, investigate multi-straw and various other, and this has been going on for some time. But we do not want to be in a position where somebody goes running to the Cape Cod Commission and says, oh, we need to have a district of critical planning concern on the Pamet lens in the area where, you know, precisely the area and outside of that area where we had determined and voters have determined that we want to put housing and open space and recreation. So this is a really, it's a difficult position for both towns to be in, and recharge is a big issue here. And meanwhile, we've got Provincetown approving, you know, hotels and restaurants and condos and redevelopment and drive down Champaign Road. So, and all that water is coming from Truro, and they have the right to do that. So it's what I'm talking about is just a really complicated arrangement. And we believe, and our water experts and our lawyers believe, that they don't have the right to put a well there. We've made that very clear.
And we didn't come here to try to reference.
I understand.
No, I know, but we do appreciate it.
I realize that.
We appreciate where you're going.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yeah, just, I don't want to be
Just
misunderstood.
people out there.
I am totally opposed to the efforts by the legislature overruling local government. I have to say that, in the MMA, the Municipal Association, as Mark referenced, unfortunately, you know, members of our delegation are very much in favor. They've actually introduced the legislation that would overrule it. Not only would they mandate density in ready zone residential areas, but they would also put in provisions where the state could actually overrule decisions on. This is coming down the pipe. Now, it's passed by the Senate, it's not in the House, but I would suggest, I don't know what that means on this, but I would suggest that we can contact Congress to the delegation of the state level. Massachusetts is a home rule state. People of Truro, the best ones to decide that's best for Truro, people of Brewster, the best for side, the best for Brewster. And it comes down to looking, instead of just trying to deal episodically at what's happening, it comes down to looking 5 years down the road, looking 10 years down the road. Radio time wants to develop. You can't just let it develop to its natural limits. You have to make those decisions, and they're really tough decisions, but they have to be made here. That's, you know, and you know, so it's not going to be easy, but I mean, I was a selectman for a long time with the great respect for the chief. But you have a much tougher job, really. And I think that we stand here to help on the member, on the Cape Cod Commission, the Cape Cod Commission has been free to help with the regulatory authority they can use. The planning. The big issue and should be resolved with people.
Thank you. You're a resident right over here. Yes, sir. And the woman.
Hi, John Linder, 13-year year-round resident here. Two quick points. One, I just wanted to kind of come back to what Select Board Member Harrison was saying, that part of our problem is that it just seems like we're in this situation in Truro where Provincetown wants a Slurpee from Truro, and we're saying, let's use straws for what we wanted. And there's just this incongruousness about the sort of demand acceleration there versus, I would say, a certain sanity that has been brought to the Truro process. How much phased, let's see if it works. And we found a place we can serve ourselves and not be told, you can't use those 29 acres. You got to use those 11 and a half over there under our pool. So change your plans. So I just want to kind of just underscore that. And then with, just briefly with respect to what Chair commented about home rule and the discussion here, Mr. Bergstrom's comments, maybe is there a way that there can be, even if there is a kind of state movement toward municipal, well, let's say to state control, taking, eating away at home rule, that there's an exemption for seasonal communities. Well, they make the exemption for seasonal communities, but they included in that is more mandates. So it's not just, it's a carrot and stick.
Yeah, that's a conversation when the legislators are in town.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm just saying. It's just,
I didn't want to, we could be speculating all afternoon. And the
Okay.
reality is we're running out of time.
We are,
There's a-
we have time and, good. And then there's a room back here, but I think.
I get the chair. Yeah, I get it.
So I just wanted to clarify that the vote in Truro for the Walsh development happened before any studies occurred. So water studies, traffic, infrastructure, wastewater, all of it. The town, I believe, voted in good faith because there is a lot of support for it. And people, all of us know people who need it and who benefit from affordable housing and contribute to the community. So when the refrain from the town is always, well, the town voted for it. The town voted for it before there were facts on the ground. And I was talking to somebody else who lived in town a few weeks ago, and he said, what if the town subsequently found out there was a nuclear pile underneath this property? Would they also ignore it the same way that they're trying to ignore the existence of a well site that is the highest yielding potential well site in our community? It's not like Provincetown has chosen to torpedo the 20 something acres that the town wants to develop. So it's not arbitrary. And it's just facts that we have come to appreciate through the vote. So using the vote as the overriding logic for doubling down on the 160 unit development is not admitting that the vote was made in good faith, but in advance of the facts that would determine feasibility and address constraints.
Okay, in the interest of time, there was somebody else in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I like the way the conversation has changed. It's no longer either or. Now it's how do we? So my request to you all, as the county commissioners, is anytime you are thinking about this, and especially when you're thinking about Truro, then you'd be thinking about how do we help Truro figure out the best way to protect our water and develop the housing we need. It's an and, it's not an either or, it's a both, it's a how do we. And I would ask that be your approach to this.
All right,
Just real quickly, just, I want to get back to carrying capacity. I mean, if you're considering that.
thank you.
Yeah, if you are considering carrying capacity,
Yes.
I would, you know, in my mind, I think there are some people who are using it, you know, to oppose housing, but I'm sure there are some people who, you know, are really concerned about the aquifers. So what I would urge you to is look at it scientifically, you know, and then you have to weigh your options, you know, because we are in a housing crisis. We need it. And I want to reinforce what Kelly said. If you come up with some solution that you don't apply it uniformly over the entire county, because Trurow's issues are entirely different from Falmouth's, you know.
This is constructive feedback.
So, yeah,
Thank you. So it's very,
that's really my comment.
very helpful, very good. We gotta let Scott in here since you paid him to be here. Can't let him go without earning his keep. Scott.
Thank you, and I'll try to be brief here. Just for the record, Scott Horsley, I'm a consultant to the town of Borough. I also teach graduate level courses at Harvard and Tufts on water resources policy.
Yeah, those.
Louder.
There were people talking, so we can.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm a consultant in the town of Truro. I think that's already been said. I also teach at the graduate level at Harvard and Tufts. 2 courses, which are right on target here. One is water resources policy. The other one is low impact development. And I'm very interested in this topic of sustainability. One thing that's already been said.
But let me interrupt you. And before you go on, you also work with Barnstable counties. And you were a major player in terms of helping us understand the Cape hydrology and helping getting us a sole source aquifer designation from NDA.
Thank you.
All right, so
Thank you.
your accomplishments are very broad.
You're stealing my time.
Okay.
So, carrying capacity was said earlier. My view is that certainly water, there's many issues that can be tied to this. And certainly water is the obvious one. But as somebody said earlier, for Cape Cod to be a sustainable place, we need to find places for them to be able to live. So my view is the affordable housing issue and water are both equal. We can compete and vote which one's more important, but they're pretty equal. I think most people agree we need both. And whoever said, and I started shaking my head. Absolutely. Absolutely. We can do both. Okay. There's just a couple of introductory comments because you're here in Truro, which is a little different than Harwich, a little different than Falmouth. One way it's different and extra sensitive is we have a lens of fresh water. You've heard this groundwater, but unlike Barnstable and Falmouth, where that's sitting on bedrock, out here it's floating. Yeah, I think everybody's heard this. It's a floating lens of fresh water on salt. Now, a lot of people have described it as a finite source. I disagree. I think it's getting smaller for 2 reasons. One is climate change and sea level rise. As sea level rises, the lens is getting thin. I could take the rest of the time to explain how that's happening. There's a written report done by the U.S. Geological Survey, Masterson, which describes this for the Pamet lens.
I know exactly.
So this is well documented. The other thing that's causing the lens to get smaller is consumptive use of water. Massachusetts has a law called the Interbasin Transfer Act. I used to serve on the Massachusetts Water Resources Commission where we voted on proposed transfer from one watershed to another. If you look at the map of basins in Massachusetts, they made Cape Cod one basin. But that was a long time ago. Now we know there's not one basin, there's 6 basins. Unfortunately, the state law does not apply to those transfers between basins. But the same reason that the state wrote a law, and the short version of it is keep water local. You take water out of one lens and move it to another, the lens you took it from is going to get smaller. So the second reason why the resource is not finite and getting less is water is being transported to the Pilgrim lens in Provincetown. This is already raised. Now there's some legislation that authorized that to a certain level, to a certain geographic line. And there's an intermunicipal agreement to keep looking at, could they get some more water? I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, that's another question, but that's kind of setting the stage here. Okay? So here's the thing that I want to throw out here is how do we do this in my view? And I've been working with the town on the Walsh property. And I also worked with the town of Wellfleet. And I think there's a very good example. So people have heard the Lawrence Hill project. When I got first hired by Wellfleet 7 years ago, I think,
to develop a watershed plan to help clean up Wellfleet Harbor. The worst place in town was Duck Creek, right downtown. And literally the first couple of weeks on the job, somebody told me, oh, by the way, Scott, we're providing an affordable housing project in Duck Creek. And I said, what? Like, couldn't pick a worse place, worse in terms of problem with the nitrogen. So I started talking to the housing committee, the then town manager, which was 3 town managers ago. And we came up with an idea. Look, can we build an affordable housing project in the most impacted watershed in the town? And the way we decided we do it is we have to turn it into what I call a positive impact development. I'll just go back. I said I teach a course called low impact development. First thing I tell my students is I don't like that term. Somebody else gave me that. Because low impact isn't good enough anymore in most places. It has to either be net zero or positive impact. So the goal for Lawrence Hill is to make it net zero or positive. And the way we did it is we combined the affordable housing project with the neighboring school, police station, fire. We're all Title V systems. Built an advanced treatment system, and we had a net reduction. We added 46 units, I believe, of affordable housing, and we had a significant reduction in nitrogen loading to Duck Creek. So there's an example where you can do both. Not only do you both, but you can actually improve conditions. So that's my goal in working on the wall property. We've been talking to the consultants. We're starting into this. We're collecting a lot of data. And we had this workshop and we said very publicly, we're not going to do anything that's going to threaten water quality. In fact, I didn't say it's meeting, but I wanted to actually make it better. I actually did a memo to the select board a couple of years ago on Walsh. It shows, much like Lawrence Hill, a nitrogen loading assessment, whereas we connect it to the school, much like Wellfleet, and some individual homes, the nitrogen loading is going to go down after you build the project. And so that's just one example of, I think, how we can make it sustainable. And my view is this can become a positive impact development.
Scott, you.
Yes.
Apologize, I have to leave. But I will, this meeting is recorded, so I think every comment that you make, we all very guys.
No problem. And I'm pretty much done. I just want to look at my notes here. Yeah, I think I have more here, but I know we're running late on time. So I guess just to summarize, I know we're in a very sensitive area. I would argue maybe the most sensitive area in the Cape because of the way it started. We have to be super careful about how we can do this, but I'm absolutely convinced that we can have both. And frankly, I think both are equally needed. I'm a water guy, so my bias would be towards water and not affordable housing. But from listening to people, I'm convinced both are equally important. And I don't think you need to compromise one to get the other. That's the important thing. Somebody I was talking to said, well, this is a balancing act, and balancing means you lose a little bit of both, like a negotiation. And again, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think if we plan this properly and design it properly, you get the housing you need and not only protect the water, but improve it, make it better. I'll stop there.
Great. Well, at the moment, we're getting almost 5 o'clock. So
Karen, could I just respond?
real quick.
And so for the record,
Yes.
what was proposed and built in Wellfleet is not the same as what is being proposed and built in Sherrill. The North Union Field public well supply on the Walsh property is currently pristine with only trace amounts of nitrogen that occur naturally. To say that we can develop that land and improve that source doesn't make sense to me. And what I also noticed here, this meeting has been conducted under the County of Barnstable seal. And what do we see in the middle? We see the codfish. And what happened to the codfish? It's almost extinct. Why? Because it was overfished. Do we want to use that same analogy as the overdevelopment on a peninsula of land that has a tipping point? And I like that word tipping point because everywhere we're going here in Sherrill, every other municipality, Barnstable County, has already been. Why should Sherrill suffer the mistakes that so many other municipalities have brought upon themselves. We should be smarter than this. We should know that by example, with a town that has water security, and we don't want to threaten them. I heard the term stewardship of the land. That's what we need to be. We need to be stewards and for what lies beneath. And also the people that live here. We all need to recognize that there are limits. And we need to live within those limits. We need to do what's best first for Hughes here. Thank you very much. And by the way, there is a lot of discussion going on here in town. And some of it might not have the benefit of the science that is included in studies that have been funded. Okay, but we can't see because the town doesn't agree with what those scientific studies produced.
Anybody else from Truro? Yeah, I'm looking for Truro. I want to hear from Truro. Yes, sir.
I just say, my name's Cass Johnson. I belong to a group called Truro 365.
Yes.
And every month we do a survey. How much affordable housing is available within a 45-minute drive of the program. On August 1st, 2 units were available for rent in a 45-minute drive. So that is the typical.
Make one comment. But there's one more person.
Yeah.
I just want to say that we have other places in Truro, and perhaps we'll have to really get creative. But the Panic Lens and its recharge area, you put all the complications aside, that has to be protected, because if that's not protected, we have contaminated an entire water source. Not just for Truro, and God forbid I think of Provincetown, but for the application.
We hear what you're saying. I think we agree with you. The Pamela Lens has to be protected. Matt, did you want to have one? Do you have a crappy comment for her?
Very quickly, I'll try to.
Something, be positive. We gotta move on.
Sorry, well, Mr. Horsley is here. Maybe we get him on the record to expand on what carrying capacity is. So it's not simply housing water. And I think it would be important because that's the record you need to go out and explain carrying capacity.
Matt's the new member from Harwich on the Cape Cod Commission, so he's making this a priority at the commission. So if you want to go on the record at some point, whether it's today or in a letter form, that's fine. You want to respond? Yeah.
Well, we don't have a lot of time.
No, we don't. I think in the interest of time, could you send us? Send us something in writing. That'd be great. I'm gonna come back to Truro. Kelly, is there anything else from Truro on this topic that we should talk about? Good?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you. All right.
That's good.
I'll say that.
Okay, that's good. Let's move on to the next item
Okay.
on the agenda.
Yeah,
Now,
the rest of it is.
just so that everybody knows. All right, we have what I would call fairly uninteresting business. And, but you're welcome instead. All right, this is the boring part of our agenda. All right, so I'm gonna allow some time, maybe the Truro board might want to adjourn at this point and move on to other business.
Yep, I moved to adjourn.
It's intersection.
We're gonna take a 5-minute break.
You know.
business. Is there any new business? Hearing none, we move on to item A. Commissioners' consent agenda. We have a number of items on our consent agenda. Is there anything on here, Michael, that we should sort of present publicly? Pretty boring stuff.
There was nothing that I wanted to vote.
Okay. You're okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
So do I have a motion?
I have a motion. I approve to, I move to approve the audit, well. I'm sorry.
Consent agenda items. 8, Roman numeral 8.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the commissioner's consent agenda items 8 Roman numeral 1 through 8 Roman numeral 5, including all subsections as listed on the July 30th.
August 26.
On August 26th, 2026 meeting agenda.
Okay, I will second that. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Note that Commissioner Bergstrom is left for another appointment. Okay, we have minutes. July 8th.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the August 4th, 2026 regular meeting minutes as drafted.
Any discussion?
None.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes.
Pass.
Commissioner report. Do you have anything to report?
No, I'll save it for next meeting.
Yeah, me too. Coming business. Michael, anything we need to talk about with respect to the next meeting?
Your next meeting, September 9th, in the Mary Pat, room, and I believe, Carol will have some, in your reports to give. And then also, excuse me, also, I believe the, assembly, leadership, you'll be attending, in the next meeting to discuss the, budget, resolution.
Yeah, exactly. Let me just say, with respect to that item, budget resolution is required by us.
Correct.
They're giving us advice on what they would like to see our budget resolution. And they have some recommendations that are quite frankly totally out of line in my judgment with respect to some of the county departments. So that should be a spirited conversation.
So stay tuned.
What else, Michael?
The only other thing I wanted to bring up, the rest can wait for a future meeting, but the only thing I wanted to bring up is there's been, a number of comments and calls about all the money that the county seems to have, and I understand where that came from. The auditors gave you a report, I believe at your last meeting. In terms of finances, the county is in okay shape. The money that they referred to in their audit speak is not something that is available funding for whatever we need. That money has been put into stabilization funds for very specific reasons, primarily capital stabilization. As you know, we have a $78 million deficit essentially in our capital spending, so we need to hurry up and bring that back into speed. We've got general stabilization that every town has. We have PFAS stabilization, which is governing, which could be a very sizable liability for the airport area properties that the county owns that did not contribute to the PFAS contamination. And then we've got what's referred to as revenue contingency stabilization. I think everybody in this room probably knows that the county does not benefit directly from real estate taxes. And so our funding source can vary year to year substantially. So we want to make sure that we put away money to be able to even out our spending year to year in the event of a downturn. So I wanted mostly make sure that people understand that the funding that appears to be just available for spending is actually is in our stabilization funds for very specific purposes. And I don't think that those are so bad.
Right.
So that's it for me.
Anything else? Robin, do you have a report for us today?
I do not.
Yeah, how about Ian? Ian, you're here. Do you have any reports? Okay, so we've done with staff and reports, okay, so, first of all, and for concluding remarks, I just wanted to say thank you, Carol. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you for having us hang out here with you for a while. And, it was quite spirited and it was very productive. It was, I mean, it was obviously a lot of discussion, perhaps, something I certainly wasn't prepared for, but, I think all in all, it was great to hear from you, how passionate they are about this place that they love.
And also,
You know,
I just really, I really feel for you in the balancing of your relationship with Provincetown. I know that everybody wants to be good neighbors, but it does seem like, you're under the gun, and I appreciate where you are and the struggles and decisions that you have before you. I'm on board of Wellfleet. It is, a tough town, and these are just big, tough decisions in this year. You're not gonna get everybody. And
no, it was a pleasure to hang out with you.
it was, and thank you for being patient, letting us overstay our.
We're gonna work on coming back at one of your select board meetings to talk about our clean water center.
Right.
IA systems, how they work and some of the support that we've done there. So we'll work on that. We'll connect with Kevin and find a time. If it works for you. All right?
Right.
So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, second. Any discussion?
None.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.